I feel like that every day. Like I feel my sleep is affected by the fact that if I haven't been creative in any form, and when I'm say creative, I'm in the music business, but like I love graphic, like if I haven't had an idea or something every day, I can't sleep.
Hi, it's Jeremiah, and welcome to the Wake Up Call podcasts, brought to you by the Polysleep studio. Hey everyone, Cheryl, thank you for being with me once again.
You're
welcome. It's the 6th episode of the Wake Up Call. And today I'm super excited because we also have Christian with us, also known for some people as Lost Heroes. And we're going to talk about a subject that is quite interesting because it's not going to be textbook perfect. This is what you should do to have a good night's sleep. It's more of a reality check and things that many people love to do around us, which gravitates around nightlife, going out, dancing, enjoying, going to a bar, getting hammered, and the consequences it have on your daily routine. So this is what we're going to talk about today. And also, we're super happy to have Christian because you've been in that industry for more than 30 years and you've learned a lot through that. So I can't wait to talk about it. So
thank you. Thanks for having me.
So now I want to start with something a bit different. The first thing is to mention to our audience, thank you. We've actually passed more than 500,000 views on our first season.
Amazing. I can't believe it.
I was not expecting that. So thank you so much, everyone. We really do appreciate that. We encourage you, obviously, to subscribe, like us. But more importantly, if you have any questions, if you have any comments, suggestions for future episodes, please leave a comment. Let us know. And I would gladly either answer the question or adjust accordingly. So the first question I want to start with is, instead of presenting you as Dr. Cheryl Galloy, what was or what is your relationship to, your perfect sleep routine and the reality, which is I like going out, I like having a good supper or going into a club or a bar, and something a bit more personal about you and that.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm a night owl. I haven't hidden that from anyone. And you're born a night owl. It's genetically determined. And, well, my perfect sleep routine nowadays is in sync because I'm working according to my rhythm. But that's because I work for myself, right? People don't usually, I guess, they're not in that position, right? So let's rewind back to Cégep. College, and then university. So those were the days, and earlier, I can go to elementary school and staying up past midnight in grade 5, whatever, but in any case, Cégep, everyone wants to go out. So I started to go out, and in Montreal, there was a place to go, always a place to go. And I would say that in university too, I would go out all the time. Well, everyone goes out, but I went out, I think, a little bit more than everyone else. So you have your Fridays and your Saturdays. Then I was like, oh, well, there's this party here. There was Crisco. Yeah. There was like Sundays at Royale. Sunday, right? Yeah. There was business. There were all these, this is aging me. Totally aging me. But, there was always time to go out. And I would study. So I studied. Mm-hmm. Went to the club. Sometimes I would stay past, closing hours because doing
the close.
And there's an after hours. So there was warehouse parties before there were raves.
Yeah.
And then go to work the next day because I was working in retail. Then did the same thing the next day, right? So if I could potentially go out a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
So that's amazing because ultimately, as good as we are to give advice, if there's a younger audience here, don't worry. Everybody went through that.
Yeah.
Right? I think Christian can attest to that. And by the way, if you could introduce yourself a bit too, because 30 years in that industry, there's probably a lot to say.
Oh, yeah. Well, I've been working, mainly as a music supervisor, DJ first. music supervisor after for different fashion shows, advertising agency, stuff like that. Producer too. I produce music. Produce more. I've done special project for like live performance, stuff like that. I've been very involved also in the fashion industry as a music supervisor for fashion show. Also creative consultant, because obviously the music is one thing, but obviously sometimes the lights or the moods or, the music dictates a lot. So like a lot of events I work, like obviously it's based around music, or music kind of dictates because it has give a certain rhythm and structure to events, to the experience, whatever it is. And that's about it,
That's amazing. And tell me what was the single thing, and we talked a bit earlier of what motivated you to go into that industry? Because I find that quite interesting, what we were discussing about.
I was, since I'm very, very young, I remember being very fascinated by, first of all, music has always been a big part of my life. It's a classic. People said, I was doing things, recording cassette, doing my own mixtape on cassette. And there was always records around when I was young. I remember music and records being always part of my life. And eventually, I discovered that, clubs had the DJ, and that's early on, mid-70s. So as an early teen, I was already, the idea of having music and playing music and, the nightlife industry, all that was kind of I started seeing stuff. You see movies, you see Saturday Night Fever, you see those things. And then you see the context of there's a DJ. And obviously radio back then was really different too, because radio didn't have the same structure. So radio was more, I would say, original in the sense that every radio station had kind of their own flavor and stuff
their
like
own
that.
Recipe,
so yeah, that's it. And at night you could listen to radio, and it was kind of a free format. So there was a bunch of DJs or music, programmers that used to program the nights, and the nights were kind of magic. It was the ideal thing, which is in reality didn't exist. In reality, in clubs, you have to make people dance. So when you grow up with that, with people playing music, it becomes that kind of ideal of, what is music in a club? That's kind of you play whatever you want, or that kind of magic journey, you grow up with that early on, and then I got exposed to, very good DJ, in Montreal, and school dance, and and stuff like that. And that was the early influence. And I think one of my cousin was a drummer, and it was an influence on me too. Then I won a drum set. I played drums for a bit. I played drums in band when I was young. And eventually, the drums stayed there, collected the dust, and I bought one turntable and another turntable and a mixer. And it started like that, really.
It's so interesting that you mentioned that, because at that time, if I'm correct, that's when we really start seeing this transformation where bands started losing velocity, and DJ slowly became the massive success it is today, which is now the largest superstar in the music industry are these international DJs. And it's fascinating to have seen this industry evolve to a point where even physically the medium used to entertain people, because it's all about entertainment, right? It's about making people live experience. Yeah. And I think that's why the level of energy we have, and we've had, and we will have in the future, we will always seek to have more energy, more emotions being transmitted to the crowd. And also that's where, going back to sleep, how do we manage that for that younger audience, for you who've been in that industry for 30 years? What's the secret? Because if you're telling me, Jeremiah, okay, now you're going to be a DJ or in that industry where, everybody's at 110% when you think energy level, how do you sustain that?
Well, it's the same way that theater, anything that has a certain repetition, theater, circus, performance, and stuff like that, there's a certain before and after. There's the performance itself. There's pre-performance, pre-production, the rehearsal and all that, depending on which, art form you're talking about, And yes, there is a performance, and there's after the performance, Obviously, people are used to okay, I have a rush of work, like regular, 9 to 5, or, like you have a peak in your day, or like you have a crunch because you have a project and stuff like that. But there's rarely that kind of collective, unless you work on a big project as a team, and then it's a success, and, the company goes, and people make money and people get really that collective thing. I think it's proper to the entertainment industry, and obviously, that's very addictive too, It's like once you're on stage, it's being on stage, and DJ, it's a smaller, now it's as big, but if you look at it, the feeling of being that center of attention / have that influence, and get that energy, that love from people, and more, because before a DJ wasn't, it wasn't so in the middle of things. Now you walk in any clubs or any festival, and the DJ is like, it's the rock and roll thing, it's the DJs on stage, it's 2 stack of speaker, like it comes. The experience is not like around you, before you see old movies or stuff, people dance together, and in clubs that doesn't really exist anymore, or very little, in certain little spot or special nights. But the rest of the time, people, it's a new language. It's the code, So the evolution went all that way. So it's way more intense than before, and it's way more performance driven than before. So people that are performing, it's less casual than, it's less, okay, I'm working 4 days a week in a bar, like there's a lot of people that it's like, there's still that kind of, when you get to a certain level, there's still that type of expectation. And I think it's true to every kind of art form, like we're really in a time where things are expected to be like, wow,
And you're right. Even now, nightlife, even a bartender is expected to perform at a level.
Yeah.
When you look at big venues, I'm thinking in Montreal, a place like the little bar you go where you can talk with a waitress versus go to a big venue at New City Gas and try to have a chat with someone. Forget it.
No, like, it's like a performance. I totally agree with you. People that work behind bars, they are performer too, especially the bigger or the more busy, or the, you should, it's not just serving alcohol. It's like, it's you, it's like the personality, like, it's also like the comedy of the night, I call it. Like, it's like, people think, people think that we're like super social and stuff like that, but it's still an exercise. When I go out, it's really like, okay, you don't put a mask, but like there's a certain engagement. You have to.
So you got to prime yourself to get to that level of energy that is required by the industry to perform at that level.
Well, I think it's. I think it's a necessary thing. Like the stress. It's like le tract. The stress before going on stage. Well, some artists are super, it's very easy for them to manage it. Some artists are like being on stage for 30, 40 years, and they still, puke on the side, before going on stage.
Too stressed, that's crazy.
All the time. And like big people that, like they have millions of fans, and they could just go on stage and chat with people for 15 minutes, and people would be really amazed to have that moment. But like they're still, and I think it's a matter of personal thing, It's like, I think it's very, I think there can be, I guess, when you're a performer, like, a comfort zone where you're like, okay, but often, you are that judge, of the performance. And even when people are really like, wow, it was an amazing night, if it was an amazing night or it was just an okay night, or just people were more into it. And often, like, you think you did very good night, but there's so many variable, like the crowd might have loved it, but, the bar wasn't really selling alcohol. So the people at the bar will say, well, it wasn't really a good night, but it's never based on, the funny thing with entertainment and the funny thing with club, especially club culture, is we can measure everything today, right? We have all those studies and ways to measure the cycle of this, of that, of the sales, the pro rata of people and women, men, races, blah, blah, gender, like versus the sale. Like we can control all that. There's one thing that cannot be measured, and it's the ambiance or the vibe. There's no vibe-o-meter. There's no way to measure it. So basically, you
Yeah.
walk in a place, like the people will say, yeah, the place party was lit. I'm like, okay, but like, is it based on what? Like, is it based on the achievement of the performance, on the reaction of the crowd, on the attendance, like on the success of your Instagram, like, you know, so like there's so many variables. How do you measure success today? What is success? Like, you know, somebody that's successful, is it success always attached to talent? You know, what talent in what? In performing and marketing yourself and having a certain image, or coming up with the right gimmick. And when I say gimmick, it's not negative, you know, but like everything is a
Putting
gimmick.
on the show, like you said.
Yeah, well, everything's a gimmick. You know, everybody has a story. You know,
Yeah.
like you gotta have. You know, everybody has their gimmick. Like everybody has a gimmick. You know, you have to. You know, this. You know, this is a gimmick. You know, everybody has like a thing. You know, that's your thing. Like when you DJ, you know, everybody has. You know, that's it. Everybody has that
They
gimmick,
develop
you know.
their style, and also
That's it.
now that you mentioned that, like that's my first question, and I want to address the elephant in the room, and you know, substance, and especially alcohol, because it's the oldest one we're used to. It's in, I wouldn't call it human nature, but close to, right? A kid very early will know what alcohol is, and consumption of alcohol in the entertainment industry, nightlife, nightclub, you know, supper club nowadays, which is a thing too. So
Festival, concert.
Yeah,
like, you know,
festival.
like
It's everywhere.
The funny thing is too is like there's a business side of it, right? So the funny thing with like nightlife is never considered as a culture, you know, and I do work with and collaborate with Montreal 2424, which is basically like that's what they're doing. They're doing studies about nightlife, about people that like work at night, not only nightlife, but actually people that work in hospital, people that work on all services, you know, like in the infrastructure that cities provide, and the business, the economy of the night, you know, and all that, you know. At the end of the day, like all that part is like the society is not made for people that function at night, but without the night workers, there's no society.
Like
There's
you cannot,
Interesting.
you cannot, you know, like who's filling up like the shelf, like, you know, in the grocery? When do you ship the stuff? Like, yeah, daytime, but a lot of it's 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
So people that work, like, you know, the trucker, and people say, oh yeah, the trucker, they get used to it. Well, maybe, but like, you know, it will, people that work at night all their life on shift, you know, like, you know, 8 to, well, what was it? Like, you know, it's like 8 to 4 to 12 today. Like you have all those alternative shifts, you know, and a lot of my friends, they work from like 6 to like, or 4 to 12, something, or 12
4 to 12
yeah.
or 3:30 to 12 or something like that.
Well, that's it.
Yeah.
So now, but also what's amazing now is like in a society, there's all those kind of flexibility, working from home, working at different time, working on contract, you know. So you have it, and I believe that like all that, like, you know, it dictates a certain way of living that, like, you know, if you want to live with society, you kind of have to, and if you work at the night industry, you know, you kind of have to mix between both, because at some point you have to be at night. But if you want to communicate and, like, you know, work within the rest of society, there's a daytime too. So like it's the juggle between all that and that. And obviously that brings people to, you know, substance. Well, there's also a substance. People get up in the morning and they need 2 coffees, you know, before.
That's so true.
I mean, like the cigarette is a big substance, like anything that's a stimulant. And we work in a world that, like, you know, we need a lot of stimulant, you know, like, I mean, this is a great stimulant, you know, like it's proven. Why you don't fall asleep? Well, there's the light, but it's also the action and the constant, the way that it's made, so you have a constant stimulation. And if you're someone creative like me, that, like, I'm using that as research tool more than entertainment tool for me, you know, like I'm always like, you know, if you follow people that you're interested to this, it's a you know, especially now, there's really that 24 hours a day thing. It's like that doesn't close at night. You know, the TVs, when I was a kid at midnight, 1 o'clock, I mean, most of the station at 11, 12,
They were stopping. There was this circle with all
sign
the
off.
colors.
We signed off. There was couple station, and then cable happened. Then there's American TV that came in. Then people had shows, and now it's cable TV, and now this is like it's 24. It's constant.
Yeah.
So we have that thing that also like you always feel constant. How many people? Okay, you close your phone when you go to bed at night. You turn it off.
So here's the thing,
It's a simple question. Yes or no?
I use night mode at least because I'm so fed up of spam.
Okay.
And I would have 2-3 calls during the night of someone in UK that I don't know or someone else. Random. So that since then I don't receive calls. I go night mode because I don't want to receive calls.
What about you?
You mean in the evening or when I go to bed?
When you go to bed.
See, this is the interesting thing,
Yeah.
right? So I will advise people to turn off their phones.
Yeah.
But if you're using a sleep app, you need to keep your phone on, right? So what I typically do, I charge it at the other end of the room, and then I have whatever app I'm using, and then it turns off. But that's how people are using it these days, right? So, but I also know that you have. And this is not just teenagers.
Yeah.
But a lot of people...
My teen, their phone are on in the bed.
All the time.
All the time. It's everybody scrolling. And I've conducted questionnaires where I've asked people, how do you use your phone? Well, what do you use? I don't ask about the phone. I ask, what do you use to fall asleep? Help you fall asleep. And they'll be like, I scroll through my phone to help me fall asleep. And I'm like, oh... They use it to relax. And that, in the end, is not doing them any favors because the light is right directly into their face. And as we know, we've talked about this with Greg, that's delaying your bedtime.
And going back to my original question, this is where maybe you can jump in, Cheryl, because ultimately what I mean by nightlife and alcohol, it's, in my case, it's two things associated. There's no way I'm going to go clubbing. And I love doing that. And, I've, like we discussed about, I've had my little moment of being a DJ and performer, but then I was like, I will not make it to 40 if I continue on that path.
It takes, look, honestly, like when I decide at a very early age, I experiment with substance, like every teenager and like stretch it a bit because like in my late teens, but as soon as I was in my 20s, like it was really clear for me that I like the idea. What I like about the night and the nightlife, there was always something, the cultural part of it. I mean, obviously, I'm a music person. The music was super important. But I'm always been fascinated with the night. And I always had that kind of idealistic like idea of the night.
That's when it happens.
That's like everything. When you see those movies, like what was that movie that was happening in New York and the guys end up in a party and like it's a 24 hours.
Paris is Burning? Are you talking about that?
Is it 24 hours?
No, sorry, the Paris Burning is Paris, but wait.
There's a movie that was like, the guy's in New York and he's going from one party to another party to another party. And finally, like, from one event to like, I like the idea of the night. And also like, since I'm a kid, like, at night, your parents go to bed. So like suddenly it's quiet, and it's still something that's with me today. I cannot go to bed before everybody's in bed, meaning the teenager. I'm always the last one. And when they're in bed, it's not like, okay, they're in bed, I can go to bed. It's like, okay, they're in bed. I can enjoy that kind of peace moment, which is, so I decided that I was interested by that type of energy. And I knew one thing. I saw my friend and I said, there's no way I can do this, I can do that, I can take this, that, and be able to have that conscious of what's happening around me. Because obviously it comes also from a performer point of view where I want to be in control. So to be in control, you have to be conscious. So the level of intoxication or like, it's like, usually if I go on a gig and I like, especially festival and you go on a stage, stuff like that, before going on stage, I say, okay, I'll drink a little something, a glass of wine because I like wine, or like bubble or something, like just to cut the edge, we call it. Okay, cool. We go on stage, we need to cut the edge. It doesn't really cut the edge, but it does, like, obviously stress
there's
is like
something, yeah, absolutely. And that's why I think it's also so popular,
Well, I think anyway, since beginning of time, animals needs to be intoxicated. I mean, there's something about, and obviously we could talk about like, there's inhibition and like, it's all society. And I think alcohol has been part of it. I mean, since the beginning of time.
Forever,
and also drug, like, I mean,
Yeah.
anything that has to do with roots, smoking, mushroom. And you can see it now, like so many studies about like, even now, like, LSD, like people are
microdosing is coming back.
Microdosing is back. Like now suddenly, like US is opening, like Canada is super open for LSD, but that's for the reason, like obviously, and this, I think our society always have like a big problem with like, people wanting to be intoxicated. And it's funny that like, in a province like Quebec, in a country like Canada, the states controlling the alcohol,
and now
controlling marijuana,
yeah.
like, when they did it, like, and it's funny how like they made it happen for like, so for 50 years or 100 years, like, it's illegal and it's bad and, marijuana is bad. And suddenly it's like, okay, it can be like, so our relation with substance has changed. And I think part of it is like a necessary thing because obviously, like you said, it's a socializing thing. And I think in society, like everybody has a role, to a certain expectation. Why you think like, 5 à 7 and all those things work, I think it's part of even business cultures. Like you work hard, you finish, you have a drink.
Yeah. Back in the days, that was this joke, in media agency and Wall Street, for example, where everybody was high all day long to go through their week and their days. So, but going back to alcohol. So, we go out, we drink. I wouldn't like to put a percentage because I don't know it. I don't have that statistic, but it's probably more than half, let's say.
The people that drink, it's a majority of people.
In nightlife, I would say the vast majority. So, Cheryl, from your perspective, what are the do's and don'ts? And then that line where as we get older, particularly, you're going to regret it, and not just for one day. And that can become something that create chronic issues, because that's where really I want to maybe help some of the younger audience or the audience here, which is it's okay if you go on a binge for a day or two, but maybe not two.
Okay, not before an exam, not 3 days before an exam.
I said it from the get-go. We're not talking perfect scenario today, but let's be honest. Some people go on a binge. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
Now, when that becomes part of a habit, this is where it will create issues. And this is where we really want to be kind of raising the flag, saying, this is what you can be conscious about. This is what's happening inside your body. This is what the long-term side effects can be. And this is why we wanted to have Christian with us today, because he's been in that industry for 30 years. He's seen people crossing that line and unfortunately not being able to come back to, living a normal life.
I lost friends over addiction, like where you tell people, you're like, okay. And I've been with friends at some point. I'm like, okay, we're going to spend a night together, and like, oh, cool. Come to the studio, we hang out. Yeah. Like, sure. I'll get a bottle of wine. We eat a little something, get some slice, and after that, we drink a bottle of wine. A bottle of wine too. Say, how you feel? Pretty good. I'm like, okay, we can have another. We're 2 people. Can have another bottle. You open another bottle. But once you had a bottle of wine, and it was like, okay, and then what? Like,
then what?
Yeah.
And it's like when people I'm telling younger people, I'm like, there's no such thing at, people, you see them smoking, marijuana, weed, and at some point you're like, well, there's no such thing as being, once you're drunk, you can be more drunk, but nothing good usually comes out. No, that's it. Like the goal is like to be high. It's like, okay, can you use that a creative way or in a social way and like cut the edge and like, I call it, I used to do conference and music seminars and stuff like that. And you walk in a room, like you're in New York or in Europe, anywhere, like, it's all people from the business, and there's always kind of that. And what do? You're like, okay, let's go have a drink. We're going to, I call it a social lubricant,
Yeah.
It's like you have 2 drinks, 1 drink, you're like, okay, now I'm okay to talk to people, probably better than if you smoke, because if you stone, you're a bit like, less. I mean, the alcohol has that thing that's like that social thing. It makes you like, for sure, like, you come to my house, we open bottles of wine, we'll have wine, it's natural. Like I'm lucky because like, I think like, I don't like to be drunk, first of all. Never liked it. It's not fun to be drunk, I mean, you have to use, for me, it's like, I don't condemn anything, any drugs, anything, as long as you use it in a creative way or to use it as a tool. For me, they're all tools, right? They're
and
like,
you remain under control. Yeah.
Yeah, like, I understand that people need to have like, people that work big days, and I have like, when I have a big day and I come home at like, 7, 8 o'clock at night, I'm like, a glass of wine. Not that it's doing me better than if I would have like a green tea or a glass of water, but there's something about it, you feel it. The first drink after a long day, the first sip, you're like, like, I mean, I think people need that. Like, and as much as people that go for a run for 10 kilometers every day,
it feels good too. Yeah.
I mean, adrenaline does fantastic thing, and adrenaline is the same thing. And I think you can probably achieve similar, feeling of like, and probably feel much better, like, but like not everybody can go run 10 kilometers. It's the same thing as a gym. You go, you come back, you're pumped, like
you're energized.
Yeah, there's an energy of it that it's different, but like, it plays. And I'm sure like, the studies about like what your body, like,
True. You know what I would say here is that in terms of alcohol, in terms of sleep, right? So alcohol does lead to fragmented sleep. So I do know, and I've done it myself, where I was having problems sleeping and I would have a nightcap.
Oh.
Not good.
Not good.
Not good.
I'm not good with that. Like, when I drink now, if I drink a bit too much, let's say I know, like, but every time I drink too much, it's really like, I call it accidental, it's not really accidental, but you're there, you come home, I open a bottle of wine during the time I was having dinner. We drank that. Somebody comes in, we have another bottle of wine. So there's, 2-3 bottles of wine that I've been drinking among, like, couple of people, everybody, you're like, oh, I had 2-3 glasses, but if I pass that, when at some point you're like, okay, like, it's not just fun anymore. When you like, when I drink too much, I cannot sleep anymore.
No.
And I don't want to go sleep. I don't ever go to sleep drunk.
Or because we're not going to sleep well.
You're not going to sleep well.
So I'm staying up until I feel better. Yes. Or until like
and that can take a while.
Yeah, like, but like I said, it really doesn't happen that often. But I understand that people come in like super drunk. I see my teenagers, they come in, boom, boom.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think as an adult, it's harder, like, and obviously, like, people know, like when people say, I cannot do those things anymore.
No.
It's not true. I can do most of what I used to do, like in terms of like, but going to bed late.
Oh, yes.
It's not it's just like, how do you, like, what else do you do around it?
Right. I think it's also because your chronotype tends to be shifted towards more of being a night owl. But for people in general, if you're a morning lark, that's going to be even harder for you to stay up. Yeah. But what I can say here about drinking is that, definitely don't use alcohol as a sleep aid. The reason why I did that was because I was experiencing insomnia, or thought I had insomnia, before I realized that it was a circadian thing, right? And yes, you can actually go to bed more quickly, and I mean, go to
you
sleep.
kind of fall asleep quickly, but you don't sleep well.
But it's not real sleep, right? It's not normal sleep. So
it's just kind of, you're intoxicated. So like,
it's you're sedated. There you go. Okay. You're sedated because it is a sedative. And so even though, people will be like, oh yeah, but it helps me loosen up. So how could it be a sedative, right? But that's because
that's what a sedative is.
It helps you to, loosen up, and then when I go to party at the beginning of the night, I'm talkative and I'm more. You don't have as many inhibitions, but that's because it's working on your prefrontal cortex and putting that part of your brain to exactly. And then as
I guess those things are kind of like the barriers, like, you know, like the stuff that people that drink before, you know, like
inhibitor. Yeah, basically.
like
yes.
before going on stage, like it was what I told you. It's like, you know, it's not like it does, for me, like having, you know, one shot of something before going on stage, it's nothing. I'm so stressed and I'm so concentrated. Like when I work, I can drink like we don't like first of all I don't drink a lot, but like, you know, let's say we have a bottle, like, you know, we have a bottle of wine. I can drink the bottle of wine and really don't feel it. At the end of the night, I'm straight because like I'm so focused and I'm so concentrated and like it's so different. It really doesn't affect me at all the same way, at all.
Well, see, this is the thing. If you're talking about alcohol with dinner, and just to give you an example from the studies, right? Mm-hmm. So the half-life of alcohol is around 4 to 5 hours. All right. So if you're having it at 6 o'clock, right? And then by 11 o'clock at night, you still have 50% of that alcohol in your body. So it takes around, you know, like at that point, you can still go to sleep and it can affect you, but it's better than using it as a night, as a nightcap, right? So if you do drink, it's better if you don't, first of all. If you are going strict.
We gotta say it, yes. We gotta say it.
I have to say it. If you're going to be strict about this, then it's better not to drink at all.
Yeah.
For so many different reasons, even for learning. So if a person studies, for instance, I take this book, I read it, and I study, then I have a drink.
Yeah.
I will not remember as much the next day. And the effects
erase the writing in the book.
And that effect will still continue the day after and the day after, the third day after.
Really?
Yes.
Because it stays in your system?
Yes, and this person, Dr. Matthew Walker, actually talks about it in this book, the study. So
if you drink, like I drink every day.
Yeah.
Not a lot.
No, not a lot.
Like I drink every day. Like I skip some nights, you know. I mean, it's like there's more nights that I don't drink. They come fewer than really.
So it's funny that you mentioned that because I'm sure it's not just, it's any type of cognitive abilities. And to a certain extent, and that's personal to me, but creatively, it could be a good starting point, but it can also create monstrosities. And I remember when I was producing, being with Fran in the studio, drinking, and we work on a beat. And you're like, and you work on that beat for 6 hours.
Yeah.
And by the 6 hour is gone, you're pretty hammered. And you're like, wow, I did something great. And you listen to that monstrosity the day after. And you're like, what did I do for 6 hours?
But I don't drink in the studio anymore. You know, like I start, you know, like I start, you know, using and trying different things and smoking marijuana, like other stuff, you know, like that can be, you know, leading you to creativity or tap into it. I think it's question of, it's the same way. Like if you want to have, like, I drink 1 glass, 2 glass of wine, like exactly. I drink 2 regular glass in a restaurant. When I get a regular glass in a restaurant, it's like after 2 glass, I'm like, wow, like it's a
small,
lot. Yeah. So I don't drink that much, you know, it's just.
You enjoy it. You enjoy it.
Like I enjoy it, like, you know, with dinner, you know, and sometimes, like I said, it's not, I don't have to, but like, of course in studio, I would never, I mean, every now and then, but it's never been very.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
like even DJing, like, you know, it
does affect, I think, any cognitive behavior,
including
creativity. You would trust me, and I'm sure you can talk to a lot of artists, and Christian can vouch for it. Being drunk will not make you more creative. No.
Like the only thing is, like, if you're looking for something, or if you want to tap into something creatively that, you know, doesn't come naturally, some people will use, you know, I believe that they can lead you, can be creative, like drug can be very interesting too. You can venture into, you know, go over your inhibition or stuff that you wouldn't do normally that, you know, you try but, you know, I don't think alcohol is the right substance
for that.
Yeah. Right. And so you were asking, okay, I'm going to quote Dr. Matthew Walker. I wonder if he's listening. would be great if he were. But essentially what he was saying is the politically incorrect thing to advise a student or someone younger or someone who's working on a project and has to really study something would be to drink in the morning. Oof. So if you drink in the morning before you study. So drink in the morning before you, and then don't drink until you have that exam, right? And so basically that's what he was saying. Just to say, when I went out all those years, I typically drank water. So that's how I was able to do it. So when I would go out, I just loved to dance. I was just one of those people who just loved the music and dancing. That's why I was always at, I went to clubs, rarely to bars. Yeah. Do you see what I mean? So I was much more of a dancer. And so I would, if you're going to dance, you can't really be too intoxicated because you will lose coordination. Yeah. So I had water most of the time. Yeah. Occasionally I would drink, sometimes a little too much, depends on there were times, but for the most part, I was, I was the one who didn't drink a lot. I'm the same. Yeah. Like I spend...
When you perform and...
But I spend my life looking at people like on the club scene being intoxicated and I was straight. Like there's no way, first of all, I don't believe I could have done what I've done with taking anything.
That's what I think.
And I was clean like the entire period of like pre-rave, ecstasy, all that. I was clean 100%. I didn't smoke weed. I didn't do anything. I drank, like I said, I don't drink a lot. So... younger, I used to drink. I used to love cognac. I remember thinking that, that was the best alcohol for me because they had that.
I loved port.
Well, anything that gave me a head buzz that I was interested into. I wasn't really the body thing is the same thing. Like, today, occasionally, like, I smoke marijuana and it's always the same thing. I never want to have like, the stuff that makes you like physically, like I always need the stimulant. I always need the indica in the marijuana thing, which is like the more stimulant thing.
Yeah. And that's probably this is one of the things.
Sorry. Sativa.
Sativa. Okay.
The opposite. Indica is the one that's like kind of mellows you out, And I didn't know that. All my friends smoke around me and at some point, I'm like, I didn't like, like I remember being a teenager and what I didn't like about it, and like, as an adult, like, no, like obviously like there's more study. And then my friend was like, no, this is very stimulant. And then you try it, you're like, oh yeah, okay. It gives you more.
It does make a difference.
Well, yeah, it makes a bit of ideas, but like, I don't think, like I said, I don't think it's possible. You need anything that when you're exposed to those things all the time around you, you really need to protect yourself, but at the same time, it's like how you make people dance and get them into something if you're not feeling what they're feeling.
That's the trap, I think. That's the trap that a lot of performance falls into.
Yeah, like, and at the same time, it's like, well, I'm smarter because like I know, and I know because I think about those things. And it's like, not everybody, but I think people that really succeed, there's a plan. It's not just improvisation. There's a preparation, but also you need to know how people are going to react on what. And you kind of dictates that too, like depend who you're playing for. Like, if you're playing after hour, that people are not on alcohol.
No.
Absolutely.
People are on drug. So that musically, like you might want to do that great peaks and valley, but
too complicated.
People are like, no valleys. It's peaks. Like keep us like, and don't mess it. And sometimes as a DJ, you're like, well, all these things, like it's kind of just one thing, but that's what the crowd is intoxicated too. So that's what they're feeling. When you play in a club with alcohol, it's totally different vibe. It's not the same music. It's not the same music that doesn't make sense when you're drunk because it's so repetitive and like will tap into something else if you think you consume something that's like has more a psychedelic effect or more like a head effect than alcohol. Because alcohol, you really have that body, like it's really a body thing too, coordination. When you're stoned, you have that thing, but you don't feel it as much, I think, like when you're using drug, that's what I think. So the people, depend who you're playing in front of you, you have to adjust to that. That's their reality, like, so, I think it does, like, it's whatever you're using, it really, and it doesn't affect, obviously, if you drink, 4 o'clock in the morning, if you're drunk, you don't have the energy to go out after hours,
No,
So the people
no.
that stays up all night, there's two things. There's a lot of people, like you saying, there's a lot of people that are motivated by the dance. They'll go dancing. They'll take substance, but the goal is we go dancing. We're going to dance. So whatever they want to take or not take, it's very dancing oriented. The same way that, I think people they know if they're going in a bar, and they like alcohol, it's a different vibe altogether, and I think it has a big effect on when you got to go to bed,
Yes.
the quality,
And I just think the culture of it also, so I think, when I go to a bar or a supper club or somewhere where there's food, it's going to be a very different vibe from where I'm more likely to have a drink there. It's because that's what goes with that culture, right?
There's not much to do. Like what do you do?
You talk?
You need, but then to talk, you need to,
You have to yell.
But if you're a bit shy, and if there's new people at the table.
It's a nice social lubricant.
Yes.
You mentioned it.
It's a social lubricant,
It is.
and I don't think and I think that, it's a total different approach. I'm sure that, obviously, if people are the people that want to go out after hour, even people there's some people that really don't like the bar, the alcohol vibe. A lot of people will tell you, I don't like the vibe. It's too, it's a bit aggressive. It plays on different things where that people that take, drug, it doesn't have the same effect. And the people talk about it. Like I said, I've been pretty much under control. I haven't consumed I don't, like I said, my goal was to okay, what can I create with those people that are into that state,
Yeah. And so I'm thinking too, you were talking about alcohol, right? You asked me about alcohol and how it affects your sleep. One of the things that I didn't mention is that it affects REM sleep.
That's what I was curious about.
And so interestingly enough, people often think when what's the most important part of sleep? And I don't know if I've said this in previous podcasts, but if not, then I'll repeat myself. Deep sleep is good, but every stage of sleep has a role, including REM. And REM is really important for emotional regulation. So if you're going through an issue, if you're stressed out, when you have REM, that actually helps you to overcome that issue. So that's what they're finding. It's also important for learning. So if you're drinking and you're going out and you drink, you go out. Why? Sometimes you do that to get over an issue.
Emotional
stressor.
Yeah.
A project that you're working on, something going on in relationship wise. But then you go home, and if you're drinking way too much, that's going to interfere with your REM sleep.
Yeah.
And your capacity to overcome the issue you're actually trying to get over.
Exactly.
Yeah. But it's a fast fix, right?
Yeah.
Having a drink, I think
Makes you forget on the short
there's
term.
most of my friends can drink. There's very few. There's people around me that don't drink at all. I have friends around me,
Yeah.
my partner doesn't drink at all.
Oh, yeah.
Zero.
Funny, me
alcohol.
too.
Yeah.
Zero alcohol.
Absolutely.
But it's not,
Zero.
there's zero judgment. And like I said, I always have bottle of wine open, sealed. And that's the other thing. I know it sounds like the control, but in control, I think when you have control, it's well, that's it. You're more in control. You can kind of use it for what it is. If you're conscious, it's okay, you're pissed off at something. It's okay, I have a drink. I'm going to cut the edge, and then, like you said, and then you get into that thing that it becomes the go-to, where, like I said before, some people go and they go for a run, which is the same thing, if you go to a run, it's much better for your sleep pattern.
Yeah,
sure.
exactly. But okay, well, this is a bit of a segue, but when I used to, I didn't work out when I was in university, but my working out was 4 or 5 hours dancing
Absolutely.
straight.
Absolutely.
I was, okay, it's kind of disgusting if you think about this. Sorry. I was really sweaty.
Of course.
If you're
perspiring all the time. But I
Yeah.
mean, there you go. It was my workout.
Yeah.
So why go to the gym? I danced, and so, but everyone has their thing, right? And
Yeah.
so if you are the type of person who is like me, who like to go to clubs, who loved the night owl. If you're a night owl, and typically what is a night owl going to do? If they're awake at that time,
Going out, yeah.
nothing else is open.
Yeah.
But the nightlife is so attractive. So for me, just like you, I had this, I just liked it. I don't know why. I just always liked the night, and maybe it was watching TV at night, and
I think
that,
the time. And it's funny, recently I've been experimenting, experiencing this really weird relation with time. And people that know me, it's known that I have like this perception of time that's like totally off, like the reality of time, It's like, and I know it, and like daytime, I find that time goes fast, like sometimes I close my eyes and I'm like, what happened? Like, I know between 5 and 8 at night, for whatever reason, when I'm home, it goes so fast. Like I close my eyes, it's 10:30. I'm like, wow, okay, I'm getting hungry. Or sometimes I'm hungry at 7, but like there's something I want to do. And first thing I know, it's like 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. I find at night, the time is slower. Like time, the perception of time, there's more time. Like between 12 and 6, like between noon and 6, it's just afternoon. Between 12 and 6 o'clock in the morning, wow. There's so much stuff that can happen.
Funny.
So much, it's true.
You know what? I can't put the exact word on it, but it is true that in terms of memorable thing you can remember, you seems to have more control over what's going on, whereas and my guess, it probably has to do something with routine, because routine is a time killer. It's necessary in many ways. That's what brings performance.
I think today it's like has to do with that also. Like,
cell phones, technology,
like,
true.
Technology, like daytime, it's even now, like, I mean, for me, like, it's hard to say. For me, what's the hardest is like, I use my phone a lot for research, find music, find ideas, research about design, research about a bunch of things, if I'm working on something, I need to do a musical research. So like I'll be on different platform trying things, and obviously the danger is like it's never just one thing, unless you go on the music site and then you just do music. But like today, you see my source of information come from, mainly like I would say, probably Twitter, Instagram, because what I follow are art, music, culture. So. But mixed between all that is all that disposable culture, I call it, which is purely entertainment, it's full scrolling. So keeping the balance between all that and that during the day is very hard. Where at night you feel like, oh, it's okay, like it's okay. I'm doing a bit of research, but I'm going a bit there, and like, and then there's no people calling you. The deadlines, they come tomorrow, so like, if you're on a deadline during that night, you have less chance to be disturbed also. Daytime is very hard, like, to say, because there's always something that can happen daytime, that email that somebody, or this phone call that people ask you, so you have to stop what you're doing to get into this, now that conversation or that. And it's funny because a friend of mine, and it's always a struggle, right? There's how many books that are published on, how to be maximum, like we're really living efficiency, performance, maximizing. And now we're maximizing, and there's the same thing. Like now we realize that to do all this, you need to balance. And then the night becomes, because we know we sleep less, right? I mean, we sleep less, period. Like there's more light, the light in the street. Like all those studies says it, like, it's not only about of course, like, I live a lot between the night and the day, but I have to, and what I was telling Cheryl earlier is like between, 6 o'clock in the morning and 12, I mean, for me, there's not much I can do. Like
So wait a second. what is your current schedule? Because you seems to go to bed quite late. And if you're saying from 6 o'clock to what time do you wake up? What is your routine look like?
My usually, like, if I'm very good, I would say if I'm in bed at 3, like, I'm like, wow, it's very early, that I'm proud. I'm like, yeah, it's early,
Yeah.
I would say that I'm starting at 3. I'm like, okay, I have to think about it, and it's really easy. I've been in clubs all my life. At 3 o'clock, it's the time that clubs close. So, like, in my head, it's like, until 3, I feel that things are happening. After 3, it's like, okay, that's like, but I would say 4 is the ideal hour for me. Like, where I don't feel guilty too much. I'm not going to be too tired the morning after. If I go to bed at 4, at 10:30, I'm up. Like, I can be up. If I go to bed, and if I go to bed at 5, 6, it will be 10 I get up. 10 I wake up, and I get up maybe at 11:30. Like, this number is like, I listen to radio, so I know what's playing, which show, like the news are playing. When the news, I'm in shower. There's a balance, into that, but mind you, if I need to get up at 6 a.m. to go to a meeting at 8, or to do a performance, or to take the plane, and to go, like, I've done that. Like, I have no problem doing it. And I have no problem doing it days in a row. And eventually it will, rebalance. Another very interesting thing is, like, when I'm traveling in vacation, I go to bed early. It's totally the opposite. Like, sometimes if I have nothing to do on a weekend, I'll go to bed on the weekend earlier than during the week. It's crazy. I know. And during the weekend, there's kind of that, it's a pressure thing. Or I think also, if I work really hard, I need as much leisure time than the time that I work to be balanced, to be satisfied. Meaning, if I work really hard, because I work on a contract and stuff like that, I need to have a buffer, not as long, because obviously if you work 8-9 hours, you're not going to have 8-9 hours. But I need those buffer of like in between, So it's kind of like walking on rocks all the time.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but basically he completely work on sleep pressure and managed to ignore circadian rhythm.
Oh no, the other thing, very interesting. I don't go to bed unless I'm going to fall asleep right away. I'm rarely in bed. I mean, yes, of course, like, you have a personal life and stuff like that, but it's still in that buffer of time. Like, I still go to bed when it's like, okay, like I kind of, if you're up to me, I mean, now I'm trying to control it a bit more, but it needs to be like, I'm falling asleep. That's when I go to sleep. I never go to sleep at it's 11, I need to get up at 6. I go to bed. Of course, I know, like, if I have but that's the other thing. If I have a plane to take, I don't go to bed.
And I can understand this. Okay, so here's the thing about night owls. Night owls, our brains are wired for the evening to be more productive at that time. So if we get into something, then, when you're so focused on something, you could potentially ignore the sleep pressure until that point where, I need to go to bed.
You need to.
But interestingly enough, morning larks can't function that way. Not typically. They can try to ignore it, but they don't maintain the same level of energy as night owls do.
I don't think
it's very hard for them.
Do they have? Because I feel, and it's funny because now I'm realizing, I'm getting a bit older, and like I'm really like, and I'm studying. I think I'm an intelligent person that's like read and stuff, and now there's so. Not only that, like, we're trying, like I said, like, we're trying to come with the recipe of performance and stuff, and like it's so basic. Like, at the end of the day, we should sleep in a certain, time. I mean, even and I would be really curious to see what's my real cycle, because all my life, the other thing with night people, like, and night owls, there's always a guilt. You feel there's a guilt in society. You're not good. Like, you're a night person. Like, I get that all the time. Oh yeah, you're a night bird. I'm like, what does it mean? Like, without night birds, you have no hospital functioning. You have no food. I mean, mind you, it doesn't have to, like you don't, and do you have to measure, like on people's like, oh, I have to work at night. And like, it's like, no, I mean, I don't know. Like, this, I think the stigma around the night, of course, there's a stigma.
There is one. The society.
And then it's like, it's like back in the old days, what's happening at night. And I'm sure you read those things, societies where they used to get up in the middle of the night, right?
Yeah, right.
What was that like?
So basically, people would, they'd have 2 sleeps, right? They'd have the first sleep and the second sleep.
Yeah.
And then, so there is some research on this, like why did that happen? So people at first thought, okay, they just woke up and that was it. But it turned out that they would wake up and society would be awake.
Yeah.
Society would would be awake around, I don't remember the time, but around 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, that's it.
And
2 to 5 or 2, something like that, right?
Yeah. So there would be people would go out.
Yeah. People would go to see.
It's, and then they would have a second sleep.
So it's kind of a polyphasic society.
A polyphasic, yeah, exactly.
Oh,
but I would say to that, and this is what so people are investigating that.
Yeah.
Was that actually healthy? That we don't know. Not that we don't know, but people question that it was necessarily healthy. However, it did happen, right? There was a time where that actually happened. What I could say, though, is there are a lot of things that can affect your circadian rhythm. So
the big question is, like, a person like me or you, like, because like I said, like, there's always the guilt, but also like, like I said, I think I'm an intelligent person that takes care of himself, and like, I'm thinking about, okay, because there's so many people that are kind of paranoid. Oh, I have to go to bed. Even people that work as artists, like, that's the other thing, like, fascinate me. I know so many DJs, and especially touring DJs, that they tour on the weekend. In Europe, it's a bit easier because I guess you're an hour, 2-hour flight. But they really play every weekend, and on Sunday they come back home, and Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, they get up at 9 o'clock in the morning or 10 o'clock. They have that. So I guess those people working at night, it's not a burden, but it's the job. But like naturally, they would go to bed at 11, 1. Like a lot of my friends, they go to bed at that if they would listen to themselves, probably 12:30, 1 would be their time. Sometimes they go to bed earlier because they need to. They know they have to get up. But how does it affect it's like, look, this morning I went to bed at 5:30. Mm-hmm. I got up naturally at 9:45. I'm like 9:45. Okay, relax. Like close your eyes. I close my eyes, and maybe for an hour, maybe not even 45 minutes. Then I turn radio on because like I know that gives me the time of like I know where even if I'm zoning out a bit, and then I'm not turning my mind. And that's the other thing. My phone is off at night. Always.
Right.
Every night my phone is off.
Yes.
I lived in a time where there was no phone. We still have a landline at home that never rings.
Smart.
Never rings.
Smart because obviously we learned the value of the landline 2 weeks ago. We had a major ice storm. Yeah. Yes. I actually had to go to dépanneur to use the phone to
let us know that we had to postpone because we were like, oh.
Right, because I didn't have a landline. My cell phone wasn't working. We had that major... Anyway, but yes.
So what I want to know is like, how does it affect someone like me, like getting, someone that had that type of pattern. And also, like I said before, like, there is days that like I didn't go to bed, there is days that, I stayed up because I have a contract, and then like, you're 9 o'clock in the morning, you have to take a plane, and, like all those things, like I had those things where, you're in Toronto and New York, you have to come back because you forgot something. Like I had all those crazy. And when I talk to my friends who are more traveling DJs, I mean, they all have like, you finish the gig, it's 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, you have a plane at 7, you go to the hotel. I mean, I have friends of mine that really can sleep for an hour, or like they will go take the hour, where I'm not going to take the hour. I'm going to take a shower. I'm going to eat a bit. And it's also like, it's all related. What you eat. Like I have a protocol. If I don't go to bed, I cannot eat a lot.
Yeah.
I will not have a lot of alcohol. If I have alcohol, like it would be very light. and I know that I need like, I'll drink green tea. I will avoid caffeine, like straight up caffeine. I'll have green tea and like stretch it. Like there's stuff like that like that I know, like I cannot
Okay,
eat.
so these are the tips you
Yes.
use to compensate
Yeah, for not going to sleep to catch a flight. Okay, so
Or
here's
even like to work on studio, like sometime like, I mean, you're trying to finish a project, like, it's like super concentrated. It's like, you have to be focused. You have to finish that project. This
Right.
time, this, that. And like, and I will avoid like, and I know what to avoid to be able to, and I know the zone where like at some point it's like, okay, oof, now it's hard, like during the day and the following day, like you haven't slept. And like, and I don't go, but like best example, 2 nights ago, I slept very, very bad. I fell asleep at 6:30 in the morning. And like at 9, I was up. 9:30, I was up. And then the rest of the day, and at night I still went to bed at 4 o'clock in the morning the following day. It's
Right.
not like at night at 11, I was like, yeah, I think I'm just going to chill and go to bed early.
yeah,
But by 12:30, that's over.
yeah.
That thing it's over. Like
Yeah.
it's
Your circadian rhythm actually gives you this. Your circadian rhythm is your wake drive, right? So there are a couple of things that can influence your wake drive. Light is the major one. It's so depends on the time when you'll naturally go to bed, like when it's totally dark and you're, let's say, in nature.
yeah.
You're camping or you're somewhere where there's no light at all, then you're going to actually start to see what your circadian rhythm is. Of course, that's also affected by the time of the year, because in wintertime and in wintertime it gets darker earlier. In summer it gets darker later, right? And sometimes in places that are further north, the sun doesn't set. So there are different things that will affect the time of when you can go to bed. Given that, we have our endogenous our circadian rhythm is particular to us, and it can be influenced one way or another by these external factors, but we have our own.
Okay, we have
Our own.
But I guess there's a bunch of people in society also that I guess that go to bed at 10:30, 11 and get up in the morning, but they're fighting, but naturally they will not have that.
Yes, exactly. So
I mean, obviously, like I said before, society,
Yeah.
like I'm running out, like if your days are from, noon, 1 o'clock in the afternoon till 6, 7, I mean, there's that window of time that you can function with
In a way.
within society if you need to work. I mean, less and less because now, like I write email at night, you put the
But
timer,
like you
send it
said,
at 8 o'clock in the morning,
I think we have a bit of an exceptional case because you've been functioning for so long on that small amount of sleep. And we talked about it in one of the episodes. He's more on the exception side than whereas the majority of people need 8 to 9 hours sleep.
Seven to nine hours. 7 is actually a nice sweet point for many people. 9 is a bit long. You're at around 6.5, which is still a bit short.
But every now and then, like, but I always tell my kid, but like every now and then I will sleep.
Yeah.
Like in the sense that I can sleep, like I can sleep 10 hours, but less and less. It's funny, like
10 hours is a little long. This is
to catch
long.
up. Let's say
okay. So
like every now and like 4 times a year, like there'll be like 12 hours or
Right.
like, if I'm really like, I've been jet lag or traveling, but even then, honestly, like I'm like, and it's like, it's worrying me because at some point I'm like, okay, like, am I going to see the effect, like in terms of cognitive, like kind of function as you get older? Because I see my dad is in his 80s and I see how, like he doesn't do Parkinson, but he has like, he's shaking a bit and is like less solid. And then you're like, okay, like
sleep is important for that.
Well, yeah, that's it.
So that's the thing. So what I would say here, I mean, we should talk. First of all, we should talk. Have a session where I talk about this.
But for me, that's it. The other thing too is like, I don't see it as a problem. For me, there's no problem. I mean, like I said, like there's a time management factor that it's not a problem. It's something that you have to address. Yeah. But I guess I got to an age where like, like I personally have no guilt attached to my lifestyle, but obviously that there's still always the question, like, and I raise the question is
What
like,
are the consequences
So-
in the
that's
long
it.
run?
So the consequences here, right, of sleep deprivation and also misaligned circadian rhythms. So when I say misaligned, right, so if you're more of a morning lark and you're trying to now finish a project,
Yeah.
and you're now going to bed at trying to live your schedule, and you do this on the like if you do
but if I have nothing to do,
no, but I mean, you're not a morning lark, right? You're more of a night owl. But when I'm talking about a morning, like a morning lark, and then they try to do that, that's going to lead to metabolic disorders, okay, diabetes, etc. Same thing with sleep deprivation. So if you're not getting enough sleep, metabolic disorders, a higher risk of cancer. Shift workers, night shift workers who are more morning larks, nurses,
all the stuff that
all of
freaks
this.
me out. Right?
Yeah, all the stuff that freaks you out.
Like
Dementia.
cancer, like,
Dementia. Let's see, and then emotional regulation issues, not
That explain a
cognitive
lot.
function, learning, memory loss. All of these things. Now, this can all be if you figure out a way to balance your time, so you still get the benefits of that night owl thing where we work at night and this is where our brain is just functioning better in the evening. If you can do that, and then but keep your bedtime more consistent. So keep your bedtime more consistent and give yourself time to sleep. When your circadian rhythm, like let's say, locks into that rhythm, so it's not changing all the time, then your sleep quality will become better and your sleep duration can also increase as well. So instead of 6.5 hours, you could potentially be now sleeping for maybe 7 or longer, right? Now, also there's a question of age. As we grow older, I think you and I, we get that. When typically a person as they grow older doesn't sleep as well. There's something in we still need the same amount of sleep, but there's something in how our body functions that sleep doesn't come as easily, or we don't stay asleep as long.
So it's a misconception to say as you grow older, you don't need to sleep as much.
No, you still actually need to sleep, but it's just that we don't function.
So you need
our sleep isn't working as well as it used to, which is the same thing as our.
So basically,
other
it's
bodily
harder
functions.
to sleep as much, but technically, you need as much.
Right. So as we age, we start having joint issues. We have all of these things that happen to us, wear and tear. Now, I can't say exactly what's happening at this particular point in time in terms of our of how sleep, why it is that our sleep becomes more fragmented. Why we don't sleep as well, why we stay more in the lighter stages of sleep.
Yeah, I read a couple of things about that. There's
But that's just that's part of aging. But we still need that sleep. Yeah.
So, question, like
Sure.
the people that are like, because I know a lot of people around me that at some point they adopt the napping thing.
Yes.
Yeah, we talked about it. It's not a bad thing.
No, but like, is it a good thing?
It can be a good thing. It could be also a bad thing. So it depends on everyone's situation. So for instance, if a person has a problem with falling asleep or staying asleep, right? So especially falling asleep, insomnia, and they
I don't know what
take
it's like
you don't
for
know?
me.
You've never
I
had.
Well, like I said, like I don't approach it as being, I cannot sleep tonight. I'm like, I cannot sleep. I can't sleep. Like I kind of juggle. Like if it's really like I said, if I have stuff to do that there's no problem, and like obviously like sometimes there's anxiety, apprehension. Like I never needed an alarm to get up. Like there's very few. I can count it on one hand. Like the time that like I didn't get up when it was time to get up without an alarm. I can go to bed, like sleep for 2 hours and get up because my head is like, okay, I gotta get up. Like it's like if I have something to do, that's the other thing too for me. Like if I have, let's say I have a meeting at 10, and I go to bed, it's 5. I know like, okay, it's 5 hours, meeting is at 10. I need minimum an hour and a half before. Like, so meeting is at 10. I need to get up at 8:30.
Yeah.
And go to
Okay.
bed at 5.
Yeah.
But like, but I never feel like, oh my God, like, you know, and sometimes like I'd like to go to bed, but I don't go to bed for whatever reason. But like, I'm never in that zone of like, oh my God, I cannot sleep. I didn't sleep. Like, it's more, I went to bed and I had choppy sleep. Like the other morning when I went to bed at 6:30 in the morning, I felt that I didn't sleep. I felt I was conscious, like, of the time passing, like of the 4 hours that passed. And like I will get up at 8:30.
So,
look at my
So it's
watch.
really light stages
Light
of
stage.
sleep, right? And so this is the thing. That's why it's really important to have a consistent sleep schedule.
But that's rare though. Like,
Yeah.
but when that happened, that's the only time that I'll be like, okay, I didn't sleep. Like, I feel it now.
You
like
feel it
yeah.
now, right? And so that's why. So I think the issue here is when your lifestyle interferes with your or when it is in conflict with.
Because the conflict is like having
Your
a
sleep
meeting
schedule.
The
Yeah.
conflict is having a meeting at 9 or 10.
That's the worst.
I mean, no.
Yes,
like
it is.
The conflict is not for me. The conflict
It's
is
funny,
not my
that-
sleep.
Yeah.
It's
It's
the schedule
true.
of the
And-
It's the society. You
It's
know,
society. And
that's wrong.
yeah, I agree. You and I agree. As fellow
No, it's-
night owl, it's true.
It's not wrong. It's just
It's
like,
just
I believe that like people have to acknowledge more that like, you know, there is people, and thank God there is people that can
Yeah.
function, and like, you know, and like, you know, this should not be that that's what you call it.
But
Yeah,
I want to bring it back
Yeah.
down because there's still a couple of questions I want to
Yeah.
cover.
Yeah,
So let's go over, you know, what you want to say about
Napping?
yes.
Okay, so napping, and then I'll talk about the whole thing with society and night owls, right? Okay, so napping. If you have insomnia, then people wouldn't, if you were to speak with a sleep specialist like Myra, for instance, they would say, no, don't do that, because now you're alleviating sleep pressure. And you need two things. Well, there's that dual theory, right? Where you have sleep pressure on one side, that's your sleep drive, and your wake drive is your circadian rhythm. So if you now alleviate that sleep pressure, are you going to be able to fall asleep?
Well,
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
But so if you have insomnia, you want to build that sleep pressure. Now, if you are a night owl and you want to sleep earlier, same deal, right?
You get up
want
earlier.
to keep that sleep pressure there, because that sleep pressure is counteracting the wake drive. But there's another thing for night owls. Light. So this light that's shining on me right now, that is huge. So you want to keep things as dim as possible at night. And as soon as you wake up with the sun. Get that bright light. And if you have a meeting, I had to give a talk 2 weeks ago for the Rotary Club of Montreal. It was at 7:30 in the morning. I'm like, people are meeting at 7:30 in the morning before they go to work?
Yeah, they do.
I'm like,
this meeting, lunch
what?
meeting, like breakfast meeting.
It's crazy. Anyway, I was like, so I talked about sleep.
That's why those people are so
Right.
catchy.
You must have been you must have been sleepy.
I was like, oh my goodness. But what I did is advance my sleep phase, and instead of sleeping with blinds closed, I made sure to keep the
That
Blinds
works.
the
open.
window.
That works.
Yeah.
Sorry, the blinds up, and I had full sunlight on my face.
Yeah.
That's going to help you, right? And it's not great, right? But we're talking about real life situations and things that you can do.
Yeah.
So
But that's good.
but
that's
that's
like,
important.
Like at some point, it's like what I was saying earlier. Like when I go on holiday, even during the summer,
Yeah.
there's something, I don't know why, but like, you know, during the summer I sleep less, and I like to sleep at night. Like I like to sleep earlier for whatever reason.
Because you follow the sun. And
don't
it's true
know,
that in
like-
Quebec, we're really not lucky on that in the winter. We really are. For a night owl, that's perfect. I mean,
I love it.
it's night all day.
I love it.
It's
Like,
dark.
yeah.
There's not a lot of sun. When there's sun, often it's covered. You know,
Yeah.
there's
But
cloud, it's cloudy.
I think it's
so-
a question of energy. I mean, everybody's different, but for me, during the sun, obviously gives me a lot of energy.
Yeah.
But also a lot of like, it's calming. I guess during the summer you can do more stuff outside and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And you know, I use my pool a lot. So like, you know, for me, there's all those the same way that like, you know, like you said, like I'm pretty sure if I get up, and I do understand my friends, like, you know, I see my partners working at 8 o'clock in the morning, like, of course, like at 10 o'clock at night, you're baked, like your brain.
You have to.
I mean, I understand why TV works, why like social media at night, people scroll, because you can't compose. You cannot be there because you're not in your peak. You've done your work, you've done what you had to do. What a normal time, and like society brings you, the work pattern brings you. It's like, okay, you work from that time to that time. Hopefully you have a job that gives you the freedom of not having to think less and less, the more bigger position. I mean, you run a business, that the night, like the day, the night, like that time never, like you need all that time. 24 hours is nothing, like.
I agree. Here's the thing.
So if
performance comes from good habits. And I think one thing you've nailed pretty hard is understand how your body reacts based on, like you were saying, green tea, stretch it, no caffeine, because I react differently.
Yeah.
What I'm going to eat. Yeah. Of course, if you eat a big meal, you're going to need all that energy to digest. It's going to hit you hard. So I think you really...
Black chocolate,
For example.
Like if I have, like now, now like it's to a point where I have to use black chocolate as a real stimulant. It's not something that I have because I enjoy. Because if I have, the other night I had like
caffeine,
three pieces of dark chocolate.
You know what? I'm going to piggyback on that.
And I'm
you're
like,
awake.
I'm going to piggyback on that because that's one of the questions I wanted to ask.
Sure.
We've talked about alcohol.
Yeah.
Clearly not a great substance. So if you do consume alcohol, don't abuse and give yourself some time because it's going to affect your sleep.
Now it's proven also, like,
Right?
in the society, it's one of the drug that's accepted. It's a social thing. It's like a ritual thing. But like now more and more the studies for many years, like red one. Now it's like, now there's
nothing.
like zero.
It's nothing.
Like, but like, sure, zero, but
it's still going to happen.
Let's go in food, then like,
but on
let's
the
go
other
in
side,
everything.
On the other side, there's something that is also a drug that, in my opinion, is much harder to stop.
Which is?
Caffeine.
Yes. Caffeine is the world's most popular drug.
I mean, I'm not a heavy coffee drinker.
I love coffee.
But I love coffee, and I'm going to have about 2-3 coffee a day. And they all happen to be, I would say between 8 until 11, I'll have 3 coffee.
Okay, during the afternoon, you don't have that
because
peak?
you know what's funny? If I drink coffee past 1 p.m., it does affect my sleep.
For me,
but
it never existed.
What I wanted to say is for fun,
Yeah.
and I've been doing that for years, for fun, I've stopped doing that in a day for a couple of weeks. The first 3 days, I was wondering, do I need to go to rehab? I had headaches.
Yeah, of course.
The morning, I was literally a zombie.
Yeah.
I was looking at my screen, having issues focusing.
Of course.
And I was like, what's going on? That little cup of coffee have that impact on me? And that's one thing I wanted to also talk about because it's, I think even before alcohol, one of the oldest beverage we've been using. And I think a lot of people abuse that without even realizing.
Can we say like, is tea kind of like we have that perception in our society that like, even if coffee is like widely accepted today, because like, I think we went through the phase where the industrialization, even if there's a lot of industrialization, I think the entire boutique of espresso, latte, and then there's something else like there's cafe. And there's all the other drinks that has caffeine in it.
Yeah. And
like if
drinks,
you have
wow, that's crazy. Yeah.
If you have a latte every day, big like this, with that much of a hot milk in it and caffeine.
I mean, if you think on drinking alcohol, don't go with the Red Bull with it.
No.
Very bad idea.
Oh my gosh, bad.
Recipe for disaster.
Exactly. Yeah. So in terms of caffeine, like I said, it's
Sugar?
Sugar. Oh, sugar. Okay, so if
Let's
you have
caffeine
coffee
first.
with sugar, then it's double. It's even worse.
Because often you do.
Yeah,
Yes,
you do both. Yeah.
You do both. So so let's just talk about caffeine.
Yeah.
So you can get caffeine from coffee. That's really the one that people will focus on the most because it has a lot of caffeine in it. Green tea has less, but it still has caffeine.
But it has other stuff too.
Yes, it has other stuff too. So I'll go over that too. You are getting it from soft drinks.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So you're also getting it from dark chocolate.
Totally.
So if you're getting, we're not dark, really good cocoa.
Yeah.
We're not talking about
No, commercial.
we're talking about. I was
Yeah,
going to say
70%.
We're saying
70
70% plus,
70%
basically.
Yes.
Right?
yes,
Yeah.
and your gourmet cocoa.
Yeah.
Then that's caffeine
Yeah.
for you, right? So you're getting this, but let's just look at coffee, since that's what people have. An average cup of coffee has around, I'd say like 96, 97 milligrams of caffeine. The half-life of coffee is 6 hours, let's say.
Wow. There
Right?
you go.
So again, if you're going to be drinking coffee and you need to go to bed at 10, you'll still have 50% of that left in your system if you've only had if you had it at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, right, to keep you awake. The quarter life of caffeine is 12 hours. So if you have a cup of coffee at 10 o'clock in the morning, and then it's 10 o'clock at night, you still have 25% of that.
12 hours later?
Yes, 12 hours later. That's equivalent to a cup of green tea.
Yeah, but I guess
Before sleep.
But I guess you're like, I guess there's a certain tolerance that builds
Yes.
too, right?
Well,
Is there?
people are sensitive to caffeine
I
in
think
different
people
ways.
are more sensitive than others, probably.
Yes. So
But
some
like, if you're sensitive and you start drinking it, like, is your system always going to be this as sensitive, or at some point you're not getting sense? Like the same way that, don't you feel at some point that,
You get used to it.
wow, is one in reality? Sometimes it's easy because of coffee, but imagine like there's a coffee and it's constant and it's always full, and you cannot measure it because obviously your brain, if you have like 3 coffees and after 3, it happens to me sometimes that like and I have a relation with coffee. That's another.
Yeah.
We can talk about it after.
Yeah.
But like, don't you think at some point, like some days you can, you feel like you can drink more coffee, or like sometimes you don't have. It's still like if you're very like it doesn't do the trick,
It doesn't
like
do the trick. So there's a couple of different things that could be there. There could be an accumulation of sleep deprivation from the night before. There, I can't speak to that question where you're saying, if will there be a tolerance? I'd have to actually look that up before I say something here. But what I can say is that caffeine on its own, if the more caffeine you have, the more it'll stay in your system. Now, the question about green tea, though, is this. Oh, sorry. Before that, we were talking about sensitivity. Yes, some people are more sensitive to caffeine than others. So for some people, it'll go out of their system more quickly. So if you're more sensitive to it, though, than the average person, you may actually need to just cut coffee out. There's some people who are like that.
But
For other people, it's not so. Yeah.
Would it apply to not only caffeine for those people that are sensitive? Would it be soft drink?
I'm one of these guys. So to give you an example, coffee past 1 p.m., I know for a fact 2 things are going to happen. I'm going to wake up during the night, or I'm going to have night sweat. Second thing, I love cigars.
Ooh.
I know for a fact. I don't smoke often, right?
Yeah.
And I like real cigars, not cigarillos.
Yeah,
you know what?
like
It's going to take me an hour.
Yeah, something you enjoy. There's a
It's
ritual.
a ritual.
Yeah. There's
I'm going to
everything.
go with that. And if I really want to go with a good cigar, it's going to be with a port or a cognac or a scotch.
Sorry.
If I do that,
I can't do that.
I will do it before 10 p.m. And that night, I know I'm going to sleep like crap, probably until 2 a.m.
Yeah.
That cigar and that single drink, I'm not going to be tipsy, but the amount of nicotine, I guess, or just the smoke itself will keep me awake in a weird state. I will not be excited or anything. I like it because it forced me to breathe, sit down, chill, and I have an hour for myself.
Yeah.
So I really like it because it calms me in a way, but I know that the substance itself, my body scream, don't go to bed.
Exactly, because they're stimulants, right?
So the question is, do you? That's the other thing too. Do you go to
I can't.
Question. If you're not tired, I mean, you're tired, but you're not gonna fall asleep.
Don't go to bed.
But at the same time,
Exactly.
But at the same time, other studies said that like you should just go to bed every night at the same time. And so like it creates that, it trains your body to say, okay, now I'm in my bed. Okay, now at this time, my phone should be off. Like, does that enhance or install a kind of mechanic, or
it has to all, you have
train your system? Or?
Yeah, you have to look at it globally, right? So, and think about the best sleep practices that you're putting into place in your life. So if you have those evenings where you want to relax and you love the ritual, because I think it's a ritual.
It is.
You know, of having that cigar and the port. Not a cigar person, but I remember cigar lounges and I remember the culture around it, and the port I like still. I mean, we can do that occasionally. We will suffer the consequences, but we have to.
But it's like eating.
But it's one of those things,
eating
right?
Junk food, I guess,
yes.
right? Or something like that.
Exactly. So if you're going on a healthy living sort of eating plan, right? You know that doing certain things, having that pasta or steak.
What's wrong with pasta?
I mean, a big bowl, depending, you know, like, but you know, I'm trying to say, like, lot of, I don't know, I'm just giving a big plate of it, right? And you know, it's going to not be good for maintaining your healthy eating plan or your diet, right? Then what are you so you have to make these choices. And it's the same thing with sleep. So what I'm saying here is, ideally, you wouldn't be doing what you were doing. You would be keeping your best sleep hygiene, avoiding alcohol, avoiding caffeine, knowing what your body can say will work, you know, knowing your body enough to say that I'm sensitive to something and therefore not doing it. But then there's also the joy in life that you have, right? So it's like you have family and you have
satisfaction
friends.
In your brain. That
you know what's funny? As she says that, people think of it of. I remember being a kid. You know, you have a pre-drink because you don't want to spend all the money at the club. You go to the club where all your senses are screaming, "Stay awake." Until 3 a.m. At 3 a.m., you're hammered. You don't really know what's going on, but you're hungry. So you're going to go for the pizza. You probably had a couple of smoke, even if you don't smoke.
Yeah, some people, party
right?
smoke.
Some people, when you're young.
Cigarette,
And then you're like, why am I doing this to myself?
Yeah, I think.
Because you basically did everything
but it's something
in a
like,
single night. You should.
But there's a bit of it. There's a bit of it that I mean, I'm not a doctor, but I believe that there's a bit of it. I mean, there's a lot of it that's social, but there's a bit of it too. Like, you know, I mean, animals eats like I said, roots and mushroom, and you know, everybody gets high. You know, it's not something that I value. But I'm just saying that.
Are we testing our limits? You know, is it?
But like at the same time, like, you know, you know that it's not good for you, but we do it because there's some satisfaction. But I think it's okay. It's like I don't eat junk food. I don't eat junk food. I haven't ate McDonald's in 30 years over. Like, I don't. Like, I have other stuff, you know. I love pasta, you know, like I love bread, you know, like I drink wine on a regular basis. But there's certain things that I'm not going to have. I haven't had a burger in 4 years. 3 years. And when I will have a burger this summer, I will have a burger. There will be a night. I will have a burger. I will eat it. And I'm going to smell it on me for 2 days after that. I feel it. I feel it in my system.
Right. And so this is the way it is for people who get to the point where they want a sleep plan.
Yeah.
So usually this is it. Like, you know, people will think about their sleep once they know the effect of sleep on their health, wellness, and performance. Either they read a study and it freaks them out.
Yeah.
Or they're now
every day I'm freaking out about something. It's like, oh my God, we should not do this. We should take that supplement, you know.
Or they're at a place where all the accumulated sleep deprivation or some other issue is now forcing them to look and reevaluate their sleep plan. But people have to make choices. So what we always say is, what are those non-negotiables in your life? Now, if you decide, for instance, that every once in a while you have a group of friends, you want to go to that cigar lounge, have yourself a cigar, a port, and, you know, and
just relax, enjoy the moment.
Enjoy the moment.
Enjoy that.
That's it. Yeah.
There is something, if that helps you, great for that one evening, right?
Was kind of
That's the thing. You can't do it every day.
You can't do it all the time, and realize that if you do that for that one evening, yes, there are consequences. Just like going on an alcohol binge will have consequences for you that you necessarily on a cellular level won't get over, because it does rewire you at a cellular level if you miss out on sleep. However, given that our bodies are amazing in that they can, there are ways for you to, still go on and live. But if you keep doing that, you probably will be you will be increasing your risk of all those issues that you don't want to have.
Everything.
Yeah, of course, night, like that's...
Yeah.
So what's the solution?
Solution is motivation. So the solution A is motivation. I would say that the person who comes to me has to be motivated enough to want to put this into practice. Then look at their lives and say, this is okay. I want to keep this here because this is my time with my friends, right? Okay, so if you're going to do that, what else are you going to do so that you're not balancing it, but that you, for the most part, are going to be sticking to your schedule? It's almost like when you're on a healthy eating plan, and you have those days
your
cheat days. That's what they call it. Although I don't really know if I like the term cheat days, but those times where you allow yourself.
I think people that are like the people that I know that like are. I mean, and this funny thing is like I have many of my friends that are really morning person, or they have no resistance. Like 9 o'clock at night,
they're in bed.
Like. They can do 10, but the morning after, if they go to bed at 10:30, past 10 o'clock, like the day after, and they talk about it, and it becomes kind of an obsession. Oh my God, like I gotta go to bed, and when they don't, they're up, they're with you, they're having fun and everything, and then they're like, I got to go to bed.
Yeah, because they know the day after they're going to be like, oh, I'm not functioning.
Yes, and I think you get to that point where you have to make a choice for yourself, right? And in the end, I can't tell people. So one of the things that I know and research has has shown that this is how people tend to react to being told what to do. They don't like it. So you have to show people why, and then they have to take ownership of it themselves and make the decisions for themselves. And you help them, you coach them to keep to their goals, but they set their goals. And hopefully at one point they get to a place where they are now able to balance these things.
I'd love it. Like,
right?
I personally love to be able to say, like I said before, at some point you say, okay, my max is 3 o'clock, not 4, not 5, but 3, or 2, or, Well, I love the morning. I'd love to be up. I think if I ever change that thing, and I can think that I would be drastically, totally the opposite. I would be up at 5:30. So, I would be that guy. Like I would be that.
So I want to slowly wrap up here. And that's one of the questions I would ask both of you. If you could talk to your 18-year-old younger self, what would be the only thing you were maybe doing before, or you were not doing before, that you would do differently? And it could be nutrition, supplements, it could be many things. But what would be the single most significant change you would do, or you would tell your 18-year-old self, start doing this right now?
Fix my sleep. So basically I would tell myself that, those all-nighters, I pulled a lot of all-nighters. Well, first of all, I was a night owl. And secondly, I liked going out. And, I had to study. I was in university. But it worked actually better for me because I am a night owl. So whatever. But the 48-hour time, so 48 hours, sometimes going on to 72, do you know what I mean? That you should not do, right? Now I think I would fast forward to my 20s, and I would tell myself, don't worry so much about trying to wake up at 6:30. You're a night owl. Now I know. You know, your circadian rhythm is delayed in comparison to the 9 to 5 society.
Yeah.
And so in that case, try to find and do something that where you won't have to wake up that early. You know, find work for yourself first of all, or find do work for a place where there's flex time, or shift work, right, where you're allowed to sleep in and
start a bit later.
Start later, so that it's more in line with my circadian rhythm, and so that I don't have to deal with all the sleep deprivation. And I worry about my brain. I worry about what has happened to my body since, because I wasn't sleeping a lot. That's what I would do.
I personally know, like, sleep especially like sleep deprivation has an effect on me physically. For me, it's my stomach.
Okay.
It's my stomach that will react the first thing, because the rest, like, I have no problem functioning on no sleep. Like, I function very, very, actually, even in some circumstances, you know, on some occasion, I think I function better with less sleep. Like, if I would sleep, if I feel that if I would sleep, let's say, all the time that I need to sleep, which is sometime would be, you know, 7-8 hours, because I could, like, you know, and when I go to bed if I go to bed at 1, I'm going to start waking up around like 8:30, 9. But if I close my eyes, I'm still going to sleep till 10:30, 11. The time I get up, like, and I see it as a bonus, you know, I will wake up at 9, but then, you know, like, the rest of the time is a bonus time. You know, I can sleep those 8 hours. I have no problem to stay in bed. You know, it's just, like you said, the life, like, you know, the rhythm, like, you know, the kind of life pattern that you try to establish. You try to have that
consistency.
Because I personally don't feel sleep deprived. You know, like, yes, certain day if I don't sleep enough, like everybody, you know, sleep deprived if you go to bed at 3 and you have to get up at 7, or sleep deprived if you have, I mean, of course you're going to tell me that I know something for sure. Sleep quality, like, it past a certain time, it's not the same quality of sleep. It's not. I believe that. I know I can experiment. Like, I know that if I sleep, like, let's say 2:00 in the morning and 6, between those hours, I know that between midnight and 6, there is, like, quality of sleep that I don't get, or that I believe now that I don't get.
Well, wait a second. It depends, I would say, here on your circadian rhythm.
How do
right?
I know what's my circadian?
So that's where,
like, that's the biggest mystery.
We had a trick.
We have, there are certain questions, and there's actually a questionnaire. I could give that to you. Well, you know what? So we'll talk afterwards, but there definitely is a questionnaire that you can go. It's a morning, eveningness questionnaire. And if you really wanted to get specific, you would actually go to a lab, and they would find out when melatonin
I like I think Greg said that.
Yes.
And I was like, this is genius, and I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And I would suggest anybody who can do it to do it. Go for 3 days, I think he said, in nature.
Yes.
Cut off from any and every type of electronics you have.
Yeah.
And try to focus on how you feel at which moment. Go to bed when you're tired. Well, and the third day, you'll have a pretty good idea.
Well, it depends at what time you're getting up.
But this is all your preference, right? So this is one of the questions we ask is similar to that. Like, you know,
I think probably me it's probably like, you know, like middle of the night would be the normal.
Because you wouldn't have a watch. You would be like.
The way I feel usually, it's like, without looking at my watch, I know that, like, there's windows. Let's say 2, sometime 1:30, 2 a.m. I could probably go to bed. Like, you know, probably I would fall asleep. But when I do that, I'm up at 6.
Yes. So then, okay. So here's the
like,
thing.
Or 7 or 8
like
or something
nap.
that's like.
It could be in like a nap, right? So, you know.
You think my body sees it as a nap, or?
Because that happens to me too. So if I sleep too early, I know it's almost like that afternoon dip that people will get, right? Like at 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock, or 3 o'clock, that they take coffee so that they can stay awake. That's when you would have your siesta.
Oh,
but
me, it's like,
but for
me, it can be brutal. Like when,
yeah,
me, it can be like, okay, I can close my eyes and like I don't nap in general, but when I'm in that morning thing, like I know at 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon, I could really like go for 2 hours and it reset myself. I mean, maybe as I get older, maybe
it changes too as you age,
maybe
right?
I'll be able to do. I'm not a big nap. Like this is the other thing too. When I do naps, it really like messes with, like I get up and I'm like confused. It can take me 2-3 hours to just get out of it.
Yeah. Right. So what
it's harder than the morning.
Yeah.
A nap for me, it's like I like napping because it's fantastic, but like I get up and like I'm so not functional.
Right. So it could be two things, right? And I can't say because I'd need to talk to you more, and probably Myra who works with me would probably speak with you too, but it could, just based on what I know about night owls, right? So because we probably, if you sleep too early, it will be treated as a nap, but it could also be that you're so stressed or you're so wired, right?
I'm very wired.
Right, exactly. You're very wired. So one thing we know about people who are very wired,
I'm
just
stressed
higher,
too. Like,
high energy people and stressed out people, but especially higher energy people.
Yeah, I guess you can consider me as
high energy. So when they did a research study on people who are high energy, and they say they're short sleepers and can function all the time, right? So they realized that a lot of these people who say that they're short sleepers, don't sleep the 7 to 9 hours, still are affected by sleep deprivation, but they're so keyed up that they don't feel it. Yeah. They don't feel it. Yeah. But when you give them something boring to do, like really make them sit in and listen to something that's completely boring, they'll actually start to nod off. If you were not sleep deprived, so here's the thing: if you're not sleep deprived, if you were given something boring, you wouldn't be falling asleep. So that was really interesting. Yeah. So a question you can also ask yourself too is, in terms of finding out your circadian rhythm. Yeah. If you had nothing to do the next day, you didn't have to worry about family. Yeah, anything. Nothing.
Yeah. It happens to me, like there's days that I'm like, okay, what I have to do tomorrow?
Nothing.
Like I'm thinking like, basically I don't have to answer any call, any emails. There's no emergency.
Nothing.
Like, I mean, it's rare.
Yeah.
Because, well, like I said, when you work as a freelancer, it's very difficult because every time that you're not working or preparing work, or like if you have a business, like you're like, oh, I could check this, I could check that, I could check.
There's more work, right? So if you don't have to worry, it's crazy. That's bad. But like, not bad if it's a sleep app, that's going to help you. But I mean, like, if you have to know how to use your phone, right?
Well,
but what I was saying is in terms of, oh, how come I lost my train of thought? Okay, so what was I saying? Basically, oh God, I lost my train of thought.
The way to find or confirm.
Yes, the way to find or confirm your circadian rhythm is if you had nothing to do the next day, what time would you go to bed and what time would you wake up?
A bit earlier.
A bit earlier. Okay.
It's funny, huh?
Around what time? Like before 12, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3?
No. Like when I was young, rarely I will do like, there's morning, if I go to bed at 10 o'clock in the morning, because it happens. Let's say there's something and I have to play and I'm playing in a club and it's after hour and whatsoever, I go to bed at 10 o'clock in the morning.
10 o'clock. No, I mean like.
And then I would sleep probably not later than 1.
Right.
1:30, 2 max. It's really rare. Like when I was younger, I went to bed at 6. I could get up at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Not anymore. I can't do that anymore.
So now, if you didn't have nothing to do, what time would you go to bed?
Probably middle of the night still.
But around like what's middle of the night? What do you mean?
3.
3 o'clock. Okay, there you go. 3 is a great time.
3 for me is like a magic time. Like if I'm in bed with the phone off at 3, I'm like, wow.
Yeah,
like
I get it.
That's like somebody that goes to bed at 9.
There you go.
Like, yes. But I feel there's always a guilt attached to my sleep pattern. Because even if I said we shouldn't, like, I'm a big, like, you should follow whatever, like, and adapt things around that. And, you have to adapt to the beat of what the job
whatever
and stuff.
you're doing. And
but like, if you can kind of like pace it, it's like, if you have a business, sure, you can come at the office at 8. But like, we know that in general, people that runs businesses, they'll be there at 6 or at, they'll get up, they'll go to the gym. They're like, there's a, everybody has this system, like, and I think that kind of performance, like, I guess, like the more performing you want to be, the more structure you have to be in efficient sleep.
It's about routine.
It's about routine. And that's where it is, So if there is a guilt, that's also stress. But ask yourself, ask yourself why. And then, sometimes the reason is valid and sometimes the reason isn't.
It's a bit valid, like in the sense that, sure, like, like if I would be up at 9 o'clock on the morning, like some of my friends, of course, at 6 o'clock at night, they're not working and they don't have something to finish.
Exactly. But then at the same time, here's the thing, people's circadian rhythms are particular to them. So when you were talking about night owls in society, really it is society that has to recognize that there are people who do have different circadian rhythms. People are not all morning people. Not everyone's a hummingbird, which is the intermediate type. There are night owls, and the night owls are costing people a lot of money. So there is an economic cost in the 4 figures per employee for people who have sleep issues. And then there's also, the societal cost of like health and wellness, right? Yeah. I mean, not health, but medical costs, right? Associated with getting sick. So if people would recognize that that there are different circadian rhythm patterns.
But you're still, okay, the question is like, it's like I tell that to my kids all the time. I'm like, it's funny because one of my son, like, the other night, like, I came home and like he was up at like 4 doing something 4 in the morning, and he's 17 and he was like 3 and he was doing printing copies. And at some point I'm like, I can hear the printer going on at 4 o'clock in the morning. And I'm like, and it's rare, like, and I'm like, wow, he's really pulling one, like, and I'm thinking, I'm like, okay, he didn't do his work. And then like he has to get up, but he can't, like he couldn't. Like he couldn't. And then I told him, I said, you know what? Here's the thing with pulling like big shift. You really have to know yourself and you have to be able, like, if you do that, you really have, like, it takes, I said, not everybody. And I guess like he's used to see me, like, I mean, like how many times, like they go to bed, I'm up, they get up, I'm up. So they're like, where did,
and going back to that, what's the biggest thing over the year you get to learn that you would say to your younger self, like your son, you know what? That's one thing that's going to help you out. Because everybody's individual, everybody's different. But what's the most single important element you've changed throughout the year?
That I changed? Well, I think like, I mean, it's all a matter of like, do you want to perform during the night? Do you want those nights? Depend. Like when I'm home and I'm rarely watching TV and stuff like that. But every now and then, like if I get like I start watching a series like 2 days ago. Well, like I can't watch 2 of them.
You binge
like,
it.
Yeah, I'm like, so like what I would tell myself, like, you have to kind of find the balance between all that. But the important thing is like we said before, like you can go to bed late, but you still need to sleep. You'll need to catch up somewhere. And you can't go to bed late and eat junk food and do this. And like, you can't, like, you can't, you really have to find that balance that works for you. Like me, I found a balance that like between food and what I do and what I don't do and sport and that, like I found a balance. Is it enough? No. Can it be better? Of course it can be better. Yeah. But I know, like we mentioned it, alcohol.
The sooner you seek that balance, the better it is.
Yes.
But like it's always kind of juggling between what's good for you and what's good for, like, the kids, like, when you're at school, Well, normal thing. If you have like, if you have to be at school at 9 o'clock in the morning. Well, you should be and my kid's been going to bed late. Like, and again, who am I? Like, how could I tell them, like I'm the
but
guy
ultimately,
that's...
no, I think that's the beauty of it, because ultimately, let's take it.
Yeah.
We took for granted that going from now on, drinking and driving is a bad thing.
Yeah.
Whereas we don't have to go back more than 40 years before. There was nothing between the seats of people, because the 24 of beer was just common sense.
Yeah.
So what I mean is that we have this amazing opportunity for younger generation to tell them it's okay to be a night owl. Whereas before, night owl, what is it? And now that's what I want to ask you guys to say. Your younger self
balance. Find
And
the balance as soon as possible.
Time management.
Yeah.
Time management is humongous, right? And learning how to say, if I have a project,
that's my biggest problem.
Is like figuring out how
it's
to.
problem of my life, like that's a struggle in my life.
Time management,
time.
It is, and it's tied to balance and routine.
But
right?
I'm balanced, but the thing is like I said before, there's really, it's where you put your energy and like how long, in this stuff that like, also you have to know how long it takes. For me, writing an email, sometimes super simple, can take me 2 hours, because then it's something else, not only sleep, it's me wanting to like, and also like, like you want to be as complete as possible, and then it becomes as, are you perfectionist or whatsoever? But like, it's like the time management, like you said, that's the most important thing. And also decide, like, the only thing I would say that's at some point is like set up, okay, this is when you close the shop. Yeah. Because for me, it's something that doesn't exist. And that's the hardest thing. If you work, if you're a freelancer, if you're an artist, a guy that works in any domain that's your freelancer, it's very hard. It's like, I'm a freelancer. I mean, I run different businesses. I have different contracts. I have different jobs. Yeah. I'm not only a DJ. I'm not only a producer that plays with my time. Sometimes I have deadline to give a project to something. And if I don't have, that's the other thing. If I don't have a deadline, things don't really get done.
Right. I think this is an issue for entrepreneurs.
Like this priority, like I call it shifting priority. It's like today, you're like, this is what I have to do this week. But then suddenly there's 2 phone calls, and what happens? Whoa,
everything shifts.
Manufacturing is not happening. We have a shipping of something. It's stalled that. Then suddenly what's priority is like, whoop, goes back. There's something else. Yeah. And then you still have that stuff as get pushed the following day. Yeah. This stupid thing sometimes, that 2 phone calls, can take me a week to get to do them, because there's always those other, like in kind of structuring, like and that's why when you work in a company, and it's like, it's kind of, they do it for you. Society does it for you. You get up at this time, you punch in, you do your work, you go back, and you're off. Like, hopefully, So
this is just one of those things. It's, I guess you could say this, and I relate to that because, I work for myself, and I have a company, and so I would say that here.
That's funny, like, because that's it, because you have a company that functions within society, obviously.
But it doesn't actually. So that's the thing, because So remember, we're virtual. So if we do coaching sessions, we could do it whenever that person's available. Yeah. We can work in different time zones. I'm a night owl, but I had to go and do a presentation at 7:30 in the morning. Yeah. So, I mean, I still have the same issues as you do. Essentially, it's the same issue. So I guess the thing here.
But do you try to, like, it's like me, like, I'm starting to assume now, even with people, okay, morning, no.
Yes.
But like, yes. I'm not close to it, but I'm like,
it has to be important.
As often as possible.
It has to be really important for it to wake me up.
But
right?
also, like, I do understand that, like, if you do, like, like I said before, like if you have, let's say 6 hour, or like, there's really my days of work, real work, like I think it's 6 hours, and I don't think anybody works more. Like I don't think your brain and like the actual work you do is more than 6 to 8 hours. It's impossible. I think at some point you become, unless it's a repetitive thing, but like mentally, I mean, you have an enterprise. Yeah. Like after 6 hours of like phone calls, meetings, answering, like problem shooting, I think your brain
so
melts.
Right. And so that's where you need to rest. And I think this is the thing. People always say that, I have all these things. And this is regardless whether you're an entrepreneur or an employee or a student. Yeah. You will function better and more efficiently and effectively when you actually have a full night's sleep. You will be able to think more clearly.
Definitely.
Think more creatively. They found that in research. You wouldn't be looping, your thoughts wouldn't be looping as much on the same issue. You'd be able to, over and over again.
Getting loopy. Like that's an expression I use all the time. Like if I had a big day, or let's say I have to get up at 8 o'clock and I have a meeting, but the rest of my day is going like another day. Like, so I think at 2 o'clock, like I still have like 4, 5, 6 hours. Like sometime at 4 or 5 o'clock, I'm like, my words is like, it's not even.
Yes. So you're getting loopy and
loopy.
Okay. So I would say that, if you allow yourself to have downtime and to rest and keep it consistent, then you'll be able to.
When you say rest, what's resting? Is it being on the couch on your phone, or
no.
Actually,
but it could be that too.
It could be that too. You'll need downtime before you can actually sleep, right? For most people, unless you push yourself to the point where, I'm tired now. Now I need to go to bed.
That's me.
Another thing. That's a lot of night owls, in fact, and that's because of the way we're wired. But when you do, you still have that bedtime routine, right? Yeah. Where you give yourself time to at least, have yourself your routine of winding down, and then you go to bed. Then if you do this consistently, it will allow your sleep quality and the length of your sleep to regulate itself. What I would also say too is if there are days where you can't, because it's a fact of life, if on two levels, the fact that you're a freelancer, right? And the fact that you have projects on the go, and the fact that you're a night owl, all those, actually not even 2, 3 different things. So that's where you won't be consistent. It's just a fact of life. And this is where I tell people, unless you change your lifestyle, your occupation, or something changes on that level, you're going to have to figure out how to work around it. It's the same thing with athletes. Athletes have to travel. They have to travel. They have to perform.
It's funny, it's like I'm working around, like you have to work, like I'm working around, not only, like I'm working on one side around my schedule, but around the world schedule as well, like it's kind of the juggle between, sometimes it's a bit me, sometimes it's a bit the rest of the world, it's me. It's like the ritual thing too is a difficult, like I was telling you, like people that works at night in bars or stuff like that, or performing or traveling, and then they go back, they're like, okay, I gotta go to bed. Like I don't know how they do it. Like it's very hard.
I don't think they can easily I think some people, they need to wind out.
Yeah, but some people do like Sunday night, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, they're in bed at, let's say, I don't know, like even earlier, but like 1 o'clock in the morning, and they'll sleep till 9, which gives them plenty, but on the weekend they'll go like without sleeping, like, or something like that, or going to bed at 5, 6 o'clock.
Which isn't good for you, to tell you the truth.
So doing both?
Yeah, to have that inconsistency, it's not good for you at all. So
it's better for someone that goes to bed, let's say, on the weekend.
All the time from 3.
Just keep it consistent. Keep it consistent.
That's better for the system than sleeping more and just because I guess it's kind of a jet lag. Same phenomenon as jet lag.
Yeah,
pretty
much.
It screws up your circadian rhythm, so your body doesn't get into that rhythm.
Man,
so
that circadian rhythm, like I want to know so much about it. I'm
right?
There's something here that we can get.
Well, we could definitely talk about that,
everybody
later.
should,
or another episode.
It's so important, like, like it's simple, like people should be really like more aware of that.
There's some education going on about that. That's actually why we wanted to have this podcast too, is to, in the previous episode, we talked a lot about it. And today I wanted to, kind of bring back what real life, especially nightlife, which is probably the most,
but
the hardest industry to tap into, creating proper and healthy habit. Because like you said, society kind of trick you into thinking
people don't really,
you're an alien.
The funny thing is I have few of my friends that are real, like more than me, like I said before, I go to bed 4 or 5, but I have really friends of mine that they go to bed at 8, 7, 8. They're really every day, and they're like in studio. They're really nighttime. Where me at night, it can be creative. It doesn't have to be necessarily. It's not always productive. Yeah. And that's the other thing too. There's like, I find that like I need to have that buffer personally, that buffer of non-creative, but without like a mission, without necessarily, there's no finality to that zone of creativity, it's just, and like I feel like that every day, like I feel my sleep is affected by the fact that if I haven't been creative in any form, and when I'm say creative, I'm in the music business, but like I love graphic, like if I have had an idea or something every day, I can't sleep.
Right, because you're focused on it and you're in that flow, right? And I know I can relate to that because if you're a graduate student, if you're doing your PhD, working on a thesis, or a writer,
exactly,
you have to get into that flow, right? And that's where you're going to be extremely productive. But I would say, and I would hazard to say that if you were to be able to sleep more regularly and better, that you'd be able to get into that flow more quickly and more efficiently and more often when you do sleep, right?
Yeah,
and so there's also that aspect of needing to...
The quality of, like, then there's a quality of sleep too, I guess.
No, I think what I'm trying to say here is we have to retrain the way we think of our sleep in relation to the work we do. We have to look at it from a different perspective of health and wellness, and not only just productivity and creativity, because there is an interrelationship. There's a relationship between the two, and not two. There's a relationship between how well you sleep, how healthy you are, and the amount of cognitive work that you can do. And creativity is cognitive work.
Totally.
For sure.
That's the same way that you're saying. Sorry.
No. Okay. Sorry. Go ahead.
No. I was just about to ask Jenny if we have some questions, because
I do have something to say. Okay. So we were talking earlier about marijuana.
Yeah.
And cannabis?
Yeah.
Right. So cannabis, a lot of people use it as a sleep aid. Well, this is a thing.
For me, it's totally the opposite.
It's not, THC specifically, and a lot of people are using that because it helps you fall asleep faster, kind of like alcohol, but it kind of does the same thing in terms of REM sleep.
Really?
It cuts out it drastically reduces your REM sleep, and it also, when you do take it as a sleep aid, which it isn't, you'll need more of it in order for you to fall asleep.
What about CBD?
CBD is a little bit more promising, so it seems to help you in terms of stress. Right, so that helps you to relax a little bit more, but yes.
So you're saying that people that smokes to just knock them out, like it's actually not helping them to fall asleep.
It's pretty close to alcohol. For
me, it's still totally the opposit. I use whatever I use. I'm trying to use things in a creative way.
No, that's
like I said, like people that smoke certain kind of, because there's a bunch of different things that have different effect, different, indica, sativa, blah, blah, and I know because I don't smoke certain things, like when I smoke them, I'm like, wow, like this really, it's not fun. It's just knock you out,
Yeah.
But it still doesn't really knock you out, I guess, the people that do that.
It actually it doesn't produce a natural kind of sleep, like not the kind of sleep that you should have.
So basically, like the
patterns.
best thing would be sport. That's another thing. Sport at night is a stimulant, But I guess
be,
it's a
not
good
for
thing
everyone.
too, Like
So yeah, so in terms of exercise,
Yeah.
so yes, that actually in general exercise will help you sleep better, but
will help
for
you
some
better.
people,
That's it.
but
Not just sleep.
Sadly,
Yeah.
the boring stuff is the stuff that works, right?
but if you work out too late, for some people they're sensitive, and so then it'll keep them up. For other people, it doesn't really bother them. So you have to know which one you are.
It's like
right?
caffeine.
Yeah.
Caffeine.
Yeah.
And the thing is, though, but for cannabis and CBD,
Yeah.
so CBD tends to help people in terms of anxiety, but there really does need to be more research done for that on
Yeah.
that. But in general, cannabis, whether you're smoking cannabis or if you're, THC, there does seem to be a negative effect on sleep.
Food, I
Okay.
guess, intake of food could be like there's some.
Yeah,
you can
you
say
don't.
thing.
Right. You know how you said you don't eat before you go to bed. Well, there's a problem with digestion that'll keep you up. There's acid reflux that could happen. That's not good for you. So yeah, eat earlier. Try not to eat. For me, I'd say 3 hours before you go to bed. So that's something that people don't realize in terms of, back to the marijuana, the cannabis thing. They don't realize the effect on REM sleep, and they don't realize that if they're using it, there is a tolerance that
builds up.
That builds up.
Yeah.
And then when you do get insomnia, so let's say you're using it for insomnia, when you get off it,
It's getting
Like-
the insomnia will become worse. And that's the same thing that is experienced. Well, that issue of insomnia or rebound insomnia is experienced by people who are taking sleeping pills. And that's why it's not, and same thing with sleeping pills. It also doesn't produce a natural kind of sleep. It's more of a sedative.
But some people, I guess,
They'll use it, but there's...
I mean, my father has been using sleeping pills for the past, a different, it's super light, but he's been on sleeping pills like 30 years over.
Wow.
Oh, wow. Okay, well, so that's the thing.
But he has big problem too, his sleep, he had he's done it all, the breathing thing, the apnea, apnea, all that things, But he's a guy that he will but again he's older, but he takes 3 hours nap a day. Then he wonders why his sleep is all, and I've tried, but he can't function at all. During middle of the day, he's
I think it's okay for the siesta, and that's fine. But what I would do,
3 hours?
3 hours is a little long, but I mean that's all.
But at some point it's
that's a
you
little
get
half a
long.
night's sleep.
Yeah.
What I would say here, though, is that in terms of the sleeping pills and the rebound in insomnia that happens, well, the same thing with THC, rebound insomnia, right? So I would say this, if you want to get a good night's sleep, consider the lifestyle choices you make, while also realizing that we're human, but realize that alcohol has an effect. Caffeine has an effect.
Everything is an effect. Sugar.
Sugar also. So you were asking about sugar and caffeine. So just to wrap this up, if you're having sugar and too late at night, right, or a lot of sugar in your body, that actually leads to fragmented sleep too. So
every night,
anything that ends on "-ine"
So
is not good.
basically, if you have dinner and during the night you want to have a small cookie and a tea, it's still
tea, green tea.
I'm trying not to do. I do tisane.
Go with an
Tisane.
infusion.
I'm trying to do. I'm trying not to do green tea at night unless I have to work.
Chamomile. It's
chamomile,
chamomile.
lavender.
Wow.
Jennifer, I was wondering, do we have any questions?
We have one question. It's more to the effect of marijuana, but it touches on vaping. So how does vaping affect sleep? Is it safe to vape before sleeping?
Okay, well, vaping
That's a good
has
question.
it's a good question.
Well,
Like
it's the same product of
nicotine.
it's nicotine. It's
So
a stimulant.
So it's a stimulant, yeah. So basically, it's like smoking.
Yeah.
So yeah, because the
you know,
ingredients are ultimately it's just a different way of
Delivering
injecting
it.
these ingredients within your body, right?
Right. It's the same thing with edibles, you could say, you know, for cannabis.
Yeah.
You still are having cannabis
Your
in the
cookie
edibles.
will not make you go to bed faster.
Yeah. There you go. Well, actually, wait. The cookie can make you go to bed faster, but it doesn't mean that
You
you're
will
going to
sleep well.
You will
Yeah.
sleep well.
Why
So-
do you think the cookie is couldn't? Because it
'Cause-
could be that like somebody has a, I don't know, like my mom like used to have like.
Oh no, we're talking about a special kind of
cannabis
cookie.
cookie.
okay.
Yeah.
This type of cookie.
I missed that part. Eatable.
Yeah, an edible.
edible.
Right.
So this type of cookie will not
Right.
Okay.
help you with the quality of your sleep.
Yeah.
Well, guys, thank you so much.
Thank you.
for being with me today. Thank you so much for helping this audience hopefully grasp the bigger picture, which is, again, it's all about balance.
Yep.
You know, it's not about the industry. It's not about the lifestyle. It's about balance and creating consistency and healthy habit through that. That's going to make the difference. And that helped you, from my understanding, over the last 30 years
Oh, yeah.
to be as efficient and passionate as you are. Because
I mean, there's tricks like, you know, like I
don't
said.
try to burn a candle on both sides. It's nobody get away from it.
No, I mean, I realize with time that like, you know, I do realize that like I'm concerned about sleep, not because it's a bad thing for me, but like I'm concerned as, okay, how, because you never feel, it's like smoking, drinking. When you're young,
You don't feel it.
you don't feel it. You go to bed like, you know, and people that are watching and listening, you know, I mean, they're like, yeah, well, I can do that. I have no problem. But like, it does have consequences. And you can see somebody that's been smoking and drinking their life. You look at them at, you know, 50, you're like, okay, he looks 50. And then you look at someone that's been doing sport and the marathon, like, you know, they will look healthier and better ultimately.
yeah,
And probably they're better performing. And so in time, like I always wonder, like, that's why I'm so concerned. Well, I'm concerned and non-concerned. It's a question that I have, like, how can I still have the lifestyle or still function within, you know, my rhythm,
Yeah.
but like, you know, at the same time, not let the rhythm takes over you.
Control, yeah.
Because like, you know, what you do at some point,
Yeah.
like, do you like, can you, yeah, that's it. Like you just, it's like everything else. It's like, oh, I'd like to have like 3 drinks. But, you know, at the end of the day, you know that, you know, if you have 2 drinks, if you have 1 drink, it's okay because tomorrow you can have another 1 drink. If you have 3, 4 drinks, maybe tomorrow it's not
You'll
good.
feel something.
Yeah, that's it. Exactly. So
Yeah.
like you know, I find it's not a combat, but it's a struggle. It's like being healthy. Now
No.
I find that sleep is that new, but it's the most basic stuff. It's like water. Like, I don't know, when I grew up, nobody drank water.
Oh yeah.
Nobody.
Yeah.
You
Now
never
people
drink
drink water all
Yeah,
the time.
people like
Yeah.
drink water. Me, I can't drink that much water. I can't. My system can't. I can't drink water that much. I trained. I tried. I can't. You know. So, like, I'm wondering with sleep, like, can you find a balance, but without going like super drastic?
Yes.
Yeah.
I believe you can, and that's what we would help
And
people to do.
and improve, like, you know.
Yeah.
Can you
for
improve?
sure.
Can you
I'm
improve like
sure,
a 6
yeah.
hour? Can you have a good? Is there a better 6 hour than another 6 hour sleep? You know, that's
You know, the first good thing
Okay.
is consciousness.
Yeah.
And just having conversation, and that's why we have these podcasts and we have this conversation. It's a bit selfish too for myself, you know. It's how do I avoid future injuries? How do I capitalize on, because we sell products, you know, we all have our, like you say, our businesses and all, but
Yeah.
it's about how do I build a lifestyle around this that ultimately makes me enjoy every single minute that I will not be able to get back. Right? Because it's gone. It's over.
Optimize your time.
That minute is gone, right?
Yeah.
tell me about
And
it.
I'm like, okay, what do I do to truly enjoy that to the fullest? And some of the most basic stuff we're finally going back to. You know, there's been a big boom about nutrition.
Yeah.
And now
Well, it's
sleep
so-
is slowly getting trendy.
Well,
But
I
for
think,
so long,
yeah.
like you said, water.
Yeah.
Nobody talks about drinking water.
No,
it's the most basic thing
Yeah,
that needs to be
we're
grounded.
made of water.
Yeah.
And we know that
Yeah.
sleep is basically when your body's kind of like, okay, you know,
Yeah.
you make us do all those things through society because
Oh, yeah.
we all agree that, like, you know,
You can skip eating for longer than you can skip sleeping.
yeah, totally. Yeah, I think you can function.
I mean, yeah, people do
On-
it.
on very little
they're gonna
food,
go
you
on.
know.
They're gonna go on. You know, a diet where a fasting for 2-3 days.
I do
in
fast.
certain case, right?
I do fast.
Don't try to fast in terms of sleep, right?
No.
There's
No, there's no
positive.
advantage.
There's no advantage at
it's
all.
not. Okay, well, one thing that you said earlier that I just want to close off on, like in terms of sleep. Okay, you were saying that when you don't sleep, it's your
I would say that-
gastrointestinal
yeah, that's-
issues that come up.
I
I mean,
Okay.
that would be the first thing.
First
that's,
thing?
I
Okay.
feel it.
Okay, so let me go into the research. When they were looking at what killed, well, basically, they were wondering what happened to people who were sleep deprived who actually, died. So it wasn't a research study, but it happened. They found out that those people who passed away, what killed them was gastrointestinal, the bacteria in their stomach.
So gut
it
health.
started. It started with that. So basically, yeah,
Ah.
I don't. Like I said, I'm doing this by memory. I haven't checked it, so
Yeah.
if it's not 100% accurate, but I do know that this has happened. And you know where I read that? This book. Okay, I'm really pushing for Matthew Walker. Maybe we should bring him here. But yeah. So that's one of the. That was something that I read that I found very interesting. That it was actually
That's
starting right here in your
It's
gut.
pretty much the basic. I think we're going back. I mean, look at the way we are in society. Like, the way we exploit the natural resources. I think it's totally the mirror of the way we manage our body too. Like, you see how much like we abuse of the environment in our developing system. I think like that kind of is the carbon copy or the blueprint of the way we're trying to, the way we eat, the way, like,
Yep.
like they're all bad options. Like, ultimately, you heard about that study that this super rich guy that's doing
Yes.
this research about
anti-aging
and all that.
Yeah.
But, obviously it doesn't work in real life to go to bed at 8, to get up at 5, but to eat that many, that diet, same diet every day. Like, it doesn't work in society. You cannot apply that, but there's some of that at some
can be
point,
taken.
yeah, there's some of that they will say maybe in 20 years from now, they'll realize that like, yeah, like this thing really works, this sleep technique really works, and I think we always find ways of saving time or having more time, having more energy, like, it's a management, but at the same time, like you said, it's very basic, like sleep your hours, like
Yeah. Don't skip your
Don't
sleep.
skip. Yes.
Well, thank you so much. And also thanks for everyone watching.
Yeah.
And hopefully we're going to come up next with another great season. And if you have any suggestion or comments, please let us know. If you would like to subscribe and get notified for future episodes, that's why all our channel on all these social medias are now. So thank you once again, everyone. Thank you, Christian. Thank you, Cheryl. And
Thanks,
until
Cheryl.
next
Thank
time.
you. You're welcome.
bye-bye.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Wake Up Call podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and follow our channel to make sure you don't miss any future episode. Thank you once again. Have an amazing week.